15th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County to begin. We'll start with a moment of silence for David Dangerfield, followed by the invocation by Teddy Floyd and the pledge led by Commissioner Joseph Flesher. Please rise.
Father, we come to you this morning as humbly as we can know how. Father, we ask that you give a special prayer for the Dangerfield family. We lost one of our own, God. We're asking that you cover them, protect them, and God, get them through this storm. Father, we ask that you pray for our commissioners, my sheriff, all the chiefs, and everyone in their respective places. God, we ask that you continue to let us to work together. Let us continue to beautify Indian River County. Let us have understanding. Let us have wisdom. But most of all, God, give us clarity to continue to make our families safe. When it's all over, God, we give you the praise. Let us say amen.
Amen. Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America, land of the free and home of the brave. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good? Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Floyd and Commissioner Flesher. We'll move to additions, deletions to the agenda. Gentlemen, with your indulgence, I have three hurricane-related items to add. 15B2 and 15B3 on the solid waste, and an update by the county administrator under his matters on the hurricane.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
I also would like to see, to accommodate, we have some representatives from Indian River State College here regarding my item 14E, if that could be moved up earlier, either in the public items. Hopefully we can get that far before our 10:30.
Right, why don't we put it as just before the public items?
Okay.
That would be perfect.
Great, thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Either under my matters or emergency services, I'd just like to add a little discussion on the recent tragedy in the firefighters and the PTSD.
Okay, we'll put that under your matters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move on to proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation designating the month of October 2016 as National Arts and Humanities Month. Commissioner O'Brien will present this to Patrick Farah, Chairman of the Board of Directors, and Donna Lindsay, Secretary of the Board of Directors of the Cultural Council of Indian River County. If they'd like to come up to the podium. Good morning, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick and Donna, welcome. I'll read the proclamation, and if you'd like to add a couple words, that'd be wonderful. Okay. Proclamation designating the month of October 2016 as National Arts and Humanities Month. Whereas, over centuries of change, through trial and triumph, the arts and humanities have chronicled history in ways that have brought the past to life and provided a vivid vision for our journey forward. During National Arts and Humanities Month, we celebrate artistic expression in all its forms and honor the ways they help define the great American story. And whereas, as artists open our hearts and minds, they embolden our dreams, connect us in common purpose, and inspire us to reach for the tomorrow we seek. And whereas, our young people have the ability to renew the world we share, we can empower them through the arts and humanities so they can chart bold paths and write America's next great chapters. And whereas, every stroke of the brush, stitch of the needle, or moment of the memoir uniquely marks our society and contributes to our national character. This month, we recognize the ways the arts and humanities have forever changed our country, and we recommit to ensuring every person has the opportunity and the freedom to question, discover, and create. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of October 2016 be designated as National Arts and Humanities Month in Indian River County, and that we call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our nation, and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in our community. Adopted this 18th day of October 2016 and endorsed by all 5 county commissioners. Patrick, tell us a little bit about the arts and humanities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Thank you for proclaiming the month of October 2016 as the National Arts and Humanities Month for Indian River County. The arts are an important policy asset and prosperity generator for our county. In addition to the inherent value to society, the arts offer a distinctive blend of benefits. As economic drivers, the arts create jobs, produce tax revenue. A strong arts sector is an economic asset that stimulates business activity, attracts tourism revenue, and retains a high-quality workforce. The arts have been shown to be a successful and sustainable strategy for revitalizing rural areas, inner cities, and populations struggling with poverty. As educational assets, the arts cultivate young imaginations and facilitate success in school, enhancing students' academic achievement in multiple subject areas. They provide the critical thinking, communications, and innovation skills essential to a productive 21st century workforce. In health and wellness, the arts foster physical, mental, and emotional health, aiding recovery processes and contributing to well-being. The arts can be effective tools for achieving and maintaining wellness for aging adults and people suffering from trauma, including military combat personnel and veterans. As civic catalysts, the arts create a welcoming sense of place and a desirable quality of life. The arts also support a strong democracy, engaging citizens in civic discourse, providing forums for important issues, and encouraging collective problem solving. Finally, as cultural legacies, the arts preserve culture and heritage, passing along a community's unique character and traditions to future generations of citizens. To demonstrate the abundance of arts and culture in our community, you have only to look at the fresh off the press 2016-2017 Arts and Cultural Guide. This guide is made possible by our many, many advertisers and by the support of the Tourist Development Council. The Cultural Council's online calendar, updated daily with new information, lists events by day, week, month. Together with these calendars, the most comprehensive listing of events in Indian River County. We've delivered a box of guides here. We'll put them on the table outside for you to share with the community. By investing in the arts, we plant seeds for the future and make our communities better places to live, locally as well as nationally. The arts mean business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. You guys want a picture or anything?
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, it's working.
Come on down. This way, right here in front of the chairman. There you go.
Lock them out.
Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2.
We'll now have the presentation of a proclamation designating October 23rd as Breast Cancer Awareness Wear Pink Day in Indian River County, Florida. I'll present this to Jean Brissette and some supporters, which she's brought with her today. Hope you'll bring everybody up to the podium, Jean.
All the supporters. That's what makes us strong. Okay.
The group is still coming on up. This is wonderful.
The room is moving.
Wow, thank you.
One gentleman in the pink shirt doesn't want to move to the front, but that's
Not
okay.
in the way of that. AJ. No, you don't want to stand up.
Good morning. I'm very happy to read this proclamation designating the day, October 23rd, 2016, as Breast Cancer Awareness Wear Pink Day in Indian River County, Florida. Whereas breast cancer is a malignant tumor that starts in the cells of the breast A malignant tumor is a group of cancer cells that can grow into, invade, surrounding tissues or spread, metastasize, to distant areas of the body. And whereas the disease occurs almost entirely in women, but men can get it too. 1 in 8 women, about 12%, will develop invasive breast cancer over the course of her lifetime. A man's lifetime risk of breast cancer is about 1 in 1,000. And whereas in 2016, an estimated 246,660 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in women in the United States, along with 61,000 new cases of invasive in situ breast cancer. About 2,600 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in men in 2016. And whereas for women in the United States, breast cancer deaths are higher than those of any other cancer besides lung cancer. Death rates have been decreasing since 1989. Women under 50 have experienced larger decreases. These decreases are thought to be the result of treatment advances, early detection through screening, and increased awareness. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River, Florida, that the Board does hereby designate the day of October 23rd, 2016, as Breast Cancer Awareness Wear Pink Day in Indian River County, to continue increased public awareness of breast cancer and to promote research and treatment for a cure. Adopted this 18th day of October 2016 and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I think we began this last year at the welcome receptiveness of the board, which I appreciate very much. I know that all of us probably see a lot of the things out in the stores and the hype and that kind of thing. Sometimes I think that can cloud the reality of what a person goes through when you're diagnosed and all the different treatment. Although I'm grateful, and I think there's a lot of women here that work for our county and that don't work for our county in the very back, that come to our meetings all the time, that are survivors. A lot of people don't want to come out, hey, I'm a survivor, because of the realities of the future possibly and the past. But I'm thankful to be here today. One of the things that I feel with this is hope is always the biggest word to me, and faith, but it takes a support from loved ones and friends and coworkers and our governmental body. And I'm so grateful for every one of you sitting up here today. Everybody in here I know that has supported me through this journey. And I say through because I'm not stuck, so I have to always say through. I still go to treatment every 3 weeks for infusion, every 4 weeks for this other injection. I don't know, the journey may never be over for me. And I figure there's a reason, and so I'm grateful for that, and I'll consider it an opportunity to do God's work in my belief. And so from that, I want to say also a special thank you to Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Zork and any other person here that has supported the Making Strides this past weekend. Some local business officials, politicians, and doctors collected over $40,000 in our county, and we're the #1 fundraiser in the state. So that speaks volumes for the type of support and that we have in our community, and you're the leaders of our community, so it's awesome. And then from there, I want to say just a quick thing. I couldn't let today pass without knowing your emergency item for Mr. David Dangerfield, the effects on this community. And the breast cancer is huge. This is big, and this kind of thing needs a lot of awareness, and anything that I can do personally or professionally, I'm more than willing. Our emergency service people, our sheriff, our chiefs of police, our firemen, they all do so much that we don't see and will never know what they experience. So my heart goes out to their family, friends, their work family, which is huge. They have a work family like I do, thankfully, and my prayers will continue. Thank you very much. And there's a lot of survivors here. All these women here are working every day, and they're surviving it too, so thank you.
And thank you very much for
Mr.
coming
Chairman,
today.
just real quick. Jeannie,
Yes, sir.
whatever happened to the cleaning for a reason? Are they still doing that?
I believe they are.
Okay.
It's a local company called Cleaning for a Reason. It's owned and operated by a man and wife team locally that are both cancer survivors. She's a breast cancer survivor, he's prostate, and they clean for you during your chemo treatments. And they don't make you go through hoops and prove it and everything. If you're going through chemo, they'll do it for you. And they did it for me while I was working like 3 times. It was a godsend.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
I never will forget, you know, we do a lot of proclamations down here, and some of them, I don't know, they seem to hit home more than others. And whatever I saw Cleaning for a Reason, at first, I rolled my eyes and said, "You've got to be kidding me," until I read the proclamation. And after that, it's one of those that I miss it. We haven't done it in a while for some reason.
I'm going to look into that now that
Please.
you said that, because they
Please.
certainly do give back to the community.
Oh,
and
man.
They did to us,
Absolutely.
to me, specifically.
But it might be appropriate every time we do this in October.
Yes,
From this
because a
point
lot of
forward.
people don't know about it.
Absolutely.
And it helps a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Thanks, Jim.
thank you.
Hey, Jeannie, you want to do a picture across the front with everybody?
And Miss
Rest of
Maya,
y'all want to come up?
Miss Maya trying to get everybody on.
Come on down here in the middle. Squeeze on down. Take a couple more steps to your right. Couple steps to your right.
Harvey's who initiated this, I hope you're, Harvey, come on up. Part of our team should come up.
There we go. Right.
Let's go.
On 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
All right.
We'll now have the presentation of a resolution in support of the 1-cent sales tax by the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. Good morning. Name and
Morning.
address for the record, please, Penny.
Penny Chandler, President, Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. Chairman Solari and members of the commission, it's my pleasure to, at this time, give you a resolution and present you with a resolution from our Board of Directors in support of the 1-cent sales tax referendum. Whereas 60.3% of Indian River County voters first levied a 1-cent optional sales tax in 1989 for a 15-year period. And whereas in 2002, 65.5% of the county's voters approved a 15-year extension with the current levy expiring December 31st, 2019. And whereas the 1-cent optional sales tax has benefited Indian River County residents in the last 27 years, and whereas the 1-cent optional sales tax has helped pay for countless capital projects to provide public services that have benefited our quality of life, such as law enforcement, new roads and bridges, emergency services, parks and recreation, a library, beach restoration, and stormwater management. And whereas continuing the 1-cent optional sales tax will continue to pay for projects that are in the public's interest, and whereas the 1-cent optional sales tax has demonstrated it has helped maintain our low ad valorem property tax savings, local taxpayers, $248,419,966 since 2007. And whereas over the last 10 years, the 1-cent optional sales tax has helped Indian River County reduce its long-term debt from $143.4 million to $54.0 million. And whereas the 1-cent optional sales tax has helped keep impact fees low for businesses, therefore increasing private sector taxable investment in our county. And whereas the 1-cent optional sales tax is a tax that everyone pays, not just property owners. Whereas our municipalities receive about $6 million in shared collected 1-cent optional sales tax revenues, along with about $16 million received by the county. Now, therefore, the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce supports the November 2016 ballot initiative to continue the county's 1-cent optional sales tax levy for another 15 years. It's signed by our chairman of the board, myself.
Penny, I'd like to thank you very much for bringing this resolution to us today. I'll note that not only has the Chamber given us a resolution in support of the 1-cent sales tax, but the Realtors Association of Indian River County also has. And the county has a lot of information on the 1-cent sales tax on the website, the county website, and I'd certainly hope that citizens took advantage of that and spent a few minutes trying to understand it before they got into the ballot box on November 8th.
We agree with you wholeheartedly. We've been putting this out in our newsletter with information that we have in hopes of helping to educate those people that we communicate with on a weekly basis.
And this is a real number. The county takes in over $15 million a year on the 1-cent sales tax, and municipalities another $6 million. So this is a large number. It's up to this is the one time the citizens get to decide whether or not they want a tax. And I'm very happy that they have this opportunity. I just hope they go in with an understanding of what they're voting for.
We do too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob, you want to go down there and get a picture with Penny?
Oh.
See, that's how you get the chairman off the dais. Give him, go tell him to get his picture taken. Oh, my God.
Luckily, that was the wood, not my leg.
You almost got the chairman off duty.
Yeah, you almost had to take up the gavel.
Hey.
All right.
Thank you very much, Benny.
That was your idea. I would have given it to you.
Yeah, I do.
Come back, Bob. Ballots.
We'll now move to information items, and I'll ask if anybody would like to pull an information item for discussion or promulgation.
Mr. Chairman, just like to highlight a couple retirement awards. Linda Kearns, 11 years with the library. Ron Hunt, 25 years with the Utilities Department. Ed Macher, 27 years with Fire Rescue. And Daniel Brooks, 30 years with Fire Rescue. So just want to thank those employees for their service and dedication to the county.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Would anybody wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item B as in boy and F as in Frank.
Very good. Anyone else? Would anybody in the public want to pull anything from the consent agenda for discussion? Anyone from the public want to pull something from the consent agenda? There being none from the public, we'll accept
Approval as
the
amended?
motion as amended from
Second.
Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner O'Brien, your matters.
Vote first.
I always like to skip the vote. We'll go ahead and take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first one, item B, is staff has gone out to bid for banking and lockbox services. They've come back with two recommendations. One is for Regions Bank for lockbox services, which I'm fine with. Under banking services, they're recommending Wells Fargo. And given the recent activities with Wells Fargo and kind of the scandal they're embroiled in, I personally wouldn't want to put any of my personal money in Wells Fargo right now, and I have a hard time wanting to put taxpayer money in with Wells Fargo. I would ask the board to consider skipping the recommendation and going with the second highest ranked bank. And just with that, I'd like to ask Dylan, I think he's got a few comments of how this could play out, so I'll ask Dylan to go ahead and weigh in now.
Thank you very much. And also, like I said, Jennifer Hyde's in the audience. I never like to recommend or support an item being, a procurement item sort of being changed at the last minute, at the 11th hour on anybody who's submitted proposals or bids and gone through the full process. I never like to see that sort of change. I certainly understand where Commissioner O'Brien is coming from with regards to his comments on the institution that was the highest ranked bidder in this. To that issue, I can at least say that the state of California has decided that they were going to suspend several of their banking relationships with Wells Fargo. And in the case law, it did talk about in one of the cases that there was no evidence of arbitrary or capricious conduct by a county's award of a contract to the bidder it believed best represented the best interests of the community, and thus under the circumstances in that case, the county was able to exercise its discretion. I think what's key in that case is that it was an RFP style case versus a straight up bid case. Again, I always caution the board on making changes at the last minute in procurement items, but understanding the issue raised by Commissioner O'Brien, I just wanted to make you aware of those different issues.
Commissioner O'Brien, I'm with you.
Anybody else from the board? Mr. Smith, name and address for the record, please.
Jeff Smith, Indian River County Clerk and Comptroller. As the Comptroller for the county, my office is responsible for doing the RFP for the banking contracts when they come up. With Jennifer's help, we did go through the RFP process in the correct way. The committee met and they ranked the banks that responded to the RFP. As always, the decision is yours. We will respect your decision. I'm just the comptroller. You guys are the policymakers. I wanted to make two comments. First of all, as the scandal has broke, it happened in the retail section of the bank, not the governmental and the institutional banking division. And two, it's probably going to be the most scrutinized bank in the country for the foreseeable future. We've not had any issues with Wells Fargo as the county. I would like to introduce some visitors from Wells Fargo who wanted to make a comment. But before I do that, I do stress that this is your decision. We're just going through the process as it was properly done. I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Vincent.
Jeff, before you do that, just I want to be very clear. I have no complaint with what staff has brought forward.
Right,
you guys were doing your job,
Yeah.
and this is kind of where, staff, you have your guidelines, and as you said, it's up to us to make a policy decision. So please don't think I'm complaining or
No.
anything with staff. You all did your job. And I will point out that the bid went out before the scandal broke, so.
Yeah.
It's no reflection on what you and Jennifer and everybody else did at all. It's just
I appreciate that.
my feeling of
Yeah.
what I believe is right.
And I share your concern as well, Commissioner. I don't have my personal funds with Wells Fargo, but that's not anything to do with this. But I would like to introduce them and give them a chance just to speak with you, and then you guys can make your decision if that's okay with the chairman.
Before you do, Commissioner Zork has a question for you.
Yes, good morning. And in your RFQ scoring model, if you will, this was purely was it a price and a performance, owner surprises on your questionnaire information in detail? Would it have changed anything knowing what we know today in terms of what you guys, your department, how it scores
Subjectively,
applicants?
I can't answer that question, but objectively, there's not any scoring for bank integrity or any of that kind of stuff. There is scoring for services, performance, fees, interest earnings, services, the ability to perform the services as required, as requested, and that's really all there is. There is no subjective analysis unless the individual person on the committee, applied subjective analysis to it. That's something that they would have to address, but there is no scoring module or scoring points for any kind of subjective criteria like that. No.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith, go ahead and invite up.
Okay. I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Vincent, Mr. Todd Morley, and Mr. Jackie Kobialko from the Treasury Management Banking, Government Banking, and Institutional Banking Division, and let them have their.
Thank you. Come on up, gentlemen and ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Paul Vincent. I'm the Regional Director for Government and Institutional Banking here in Florida for Wells Fargo. And my address is 100 South Ashley Street in Tampa, Florida.
My name is Todd Morley, and I'm the Relationship Manager for the county's accounts, and my address is 2200 Katy Way, Orlando, Florida.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jackie Kobielko. I'm the Treasury Management Sales Consultant for Indian River County. My address is 61 Northeast 47th Court in Oakland Park, Florida.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we appreciate you giving us an opportunity to address you here this morning. Like you, I think 99.9% of employees at Wells Fargo are equally upset at the behavior of some of our colleagues that have brought this all to light. We made mistakes. We're very sorry for that. We're doing everything that we can to rectify that and rebuild the trust of the communities. And we'd just like to ask that you consider, as you make your decision, the years of service that we have provided to the governments here in Indian River County and throughout Florida. We take that responsibility very seriously. As was pointed out, the services that we provide directly to the county were not impacted by any of the behaviors that were noted in this scandal. Again, we're taking every step we can to make sure that we rectify and rebuild trust for the events that have happened. And we're certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have of Wells Fargo.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the gentleman?
I don't have a question. I appreciate you all coming from all different parts of the state to be here this morning. You know, but it is a thing about regaining trust in my mind. And I don't think that's something that happens overnight. And just so I think, in my mind, you know, this is a 3-year contract, and there'll certainly be an opportunity to bid again. And, you know, maybe after 3 years, that trust would have been restored. You know, I kind of look at this as, is this just the tip of the iceberg? Is there more out there we don't know about? And what other shoes are going to fall? And as being trusted with the taxpayers' dollars, I feel it's my fiduciary duty to make sure I do everything I can that it's not caught up in a scandal or potential future issues. So I greatly appreciate you coming, greatly appreciate the efforts you're going to make in the future to regain that trust. But right now, I just don't have that feeling. So that's just kind of where I stand as my personal feelings on it. Thank you.
We can certainly appreciate those feelings and understand where you're coming from. I would point out that we've attended several meetings similar to this around Florida since this news broke. We've been asked to speak in front of several commissions.
I would imagine, yeah.
And I'd like to point out that, you know, from the CFO of Florida with the state of Florida's business to many major counties, school boards, and cities throughout Florida, you know, folks are taking a wait-and-see approach to make sure that their business hasn't been compromised. Everybody is scrutinizing things as we would expect, and we're helping to do that. So we're certainly willing to be forthcoming with any information or technologies or reviews that anyone would care to have to make sure that, you know, their trust has not been violated. So I just wanted to make those additional points.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for them?
I personally would like to have a Seabiscuit moment here. You sustained a serious injury. It's been identified. Folks have seen it. We hold the public trust. And in doing so, being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar, it kind of trumps that Seabiscuit moment. And I just want you to know that because I appreciate our relationship in the past and the notifications and the constant updates, but we didn't get the update on this scenario until it was already vetted out with the review. So unfortunately, I have to agree that this item needed to be pulled.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do just, I'm not sure where everything will go here, but maybe have two motions here, and I'd like to make the first motion that we accept staff recommendation for Regions Bank for the lockbox services.
Fine, we have a motion to accept Regions Bank for lockboxes. That's seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion on that motion?
Just real quick, what do we use lock boxes for?
Those,
And where's the closest one?
And who has the key?
a lot of the payments, if someone pays their water bill, for instance, those go through a lockbox service at the banking location. Jeff can talk about it.
The reason we use a lockbox is to speed and efficiency of processing utility payments. They send it to a specific address, and it's automatically credited to our account, and then they process it with the utilities department to make sure that the specific account gets credited for payment. So that's why we, yeah.
Thanks.
So we have any other questions or comments? We have the motion from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move to the banking services.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we do not accept staff recommendation and go to the second highest ranked bank, which would be TD Bank for the banking services.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any other discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And Commissioner O'Brien, you have item F.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the final settlement of, I guess, what we've always known as the Stilt House case. And I just would like Dylan to summarize this for us just in 30 seconds or so, and just make sure that the county is clearly making sure our concerns are addressed and that we are happy with this and we're good with the settlement.
Thank you very much to Commissioner O'Brien and to the full commission. Yes, last year, actually, in the spring of 2015, there was a case that was going on concerning roughly, I think it's 3 stilt houses located within Blue Cypress Lake. At the time, the argument of the folks who owned those structures was that it was county-owned property, and the state was arguing it was below the mean high water line. It was state-owned property. The case actually went to the county attorney's office had recommended we give a deed over to the state to avoid getting involved in the litigation. It was the board's decision to get involved in the litigation, assist the folks who were the stilt house owners. We filed a complaint, or answered the complaint, filed some counterclaims against the stilt house owners to protect our interests. Since that time, we've gone to mediation, and at the mediation, the stilt house owners actually agreed that the state owned the property. They have entered into lease agreements with the state, or at least have agreed in principle to enter into lease agreements consistent with consent final judgments. Those consent final judgments have been filed with the court, and at this point, the parties were looking for the county to accept that the county did not own the property and it was owned by the state, and thus this is the settlement that I'm bringing back to the board.
Okay, and then the folks that are living in the stilt houses, they're good with the mediated settlement as well?
Yes, actually, in your backup, there is a letter from the attorneys from representing the stilt house owners, and they have, I don't know if the words are in there, but they had agreed to vigorously support the settlement that was proposed today.
Okay.
I would like to note that the county will be entering, as part of this consent final judgment, the county will be entering into a deed, essentially quitclaiming county deed over to the state, the property that is substantially similar to one that was presented back in March of 2015 to the board.
Okay, good. With that, move staff recommendation.
And I'll second that.
Well, you missed. It was a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. Anybody from the audience want to speak on this matter? Any other questions from the board?
Commissioners, I'd just like to say thank you for your help in this. I think this was a win for the little guy, and
Absolutely.
I do appreciate
I want to make sure the little guys are okay with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. That puts us through the consent. The next item, we begin public items, and we...
Commissioner Zork's item? I think
No,
we moved
that's
that.
what I was just about to do. We moved it to just before the first of public items,
My apologies.
which is 14E1. Commissioner Zork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing the change in the schedule. And for those of you at home, I don't know what, Scott, what can they see at home on the monitor or not see in terms of
Just my
graphics?
pretty face.
A blue screen with some icons.
Okay, so we won't get the full visual effect of this. Just a little short history on this. Back in 2013, I had started a list of economic review items. There were 13 items. On that list was item number 5, which was looking at some of the land use areas, or land uses in the 66th Avenue and State Road 60 area. Right after that list was started, there was a site plan application for a parcel that would have been directly east of Indian River State's College piece. And in looking at the site plan, the way it was drawn, and they were legally correct, that property owner would have essentially gotten the primary sole access off of State Road 60 into the individual parcel east of the Indian River State's College holdings that they had. And I said, gosh, if that goes through, then the college, their intent of having a access point off of State Road 60 would be potentially eliminated, especially from the westbound left turn into the site. So for whatever reason, that applicant withdrew its site plan, and I said that created an opportunity to start a discussion with the college and the surrounding landowners. And what we're basically just bringing to the public today is that the first step of many of a cooperative, sort of a private-public partnership between Indian River State College and the surrounding owners to address the ingress and egress of the property to where all the owners will now have a common way of getting in and out of their property, and it consolidates the college's property and the parcels that were held privately around the college. This has probably been going on in discussions in some formality for about a year and a half. And we do have 2 representatives from Indian River State College. 2 things I'd like to make clear is at the end of the day, there will be some text amendments brought forward that will address the rules and regulations on the private side of the ownership piece. The piece belonging to Indian River State College really we have no control or regulations over what they do, so they'll be able to do exactly what they could before, if you want to call it a land swap or reconfiguration. Their abilities and rights will remain in effect as it is today as going forward. The formal process of entering into the agreement, there's still more meetings between the private landowners and the college, but this is one of the kind of the first step of getting it conceptually that addresses, from my standpoint, since this falls in my district, is that all the property owners would now have a way to ingress and egress their property in a common fashion to where everybody wins in this, not just who gets there first and then the rest of the folks are kind of scrambling trying to figure out how to enter into their property in a reasonable fashion. Is there anything that the college would like to add to that discussion? They have been very helpful in working through the process. We want to thank them for their cooperation. The landowners that are around it, I think at the end of the day, I was looking for a win-win, and I think we'll come up with that here at the end. The private owners are going to be working with staff, finalizing the rules and regulations of the private ownership piece. And then there's an agreement between the private owners and the college on the infrastructure improvements of who will pay and when, and the series of steps that will go along with that. So at the end of the day, I think this will be a great win for the college and a great win for the owners that it surrounds. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chairman. Any questions?
This was an information item only, so
Yes.
there's no vote on this. Any questions for Mr. Zork? Anybody from the audience want to make a comment on this? There being none, we'll move to the other public hearings.
Thank you for coming.
These 2 public hearings were continued from the meeting of October 11, 2016. The first is a request from Stella Transport for a Class E1 Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity to provide wheelchair and non-emergency stretcher transports originating from Indian River County. Good morning, Mr. Burkeen.
Good Morning, Commissioners. Brian Burkeen, Department of Emergency Services. Have before you today is an application from Stellar Transport located out of Brevard County for a Class E1 COPCN Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. Just to hit some of the highlights for you, that the county code requires them to apply. We hold an informational meeting with the other providers, and then we come before you with a public hearing. On July 29, 2016, Stellar submitted their application for a Class E1 Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. We held a informational meeting on September 15, 2016. There are 3 other providers within the county that provide the wheelchair services, and that is American Ambulance, County Ambulance, and We Care of the Treasure Coast. Each of those providers were invited to the meeting, as well as all the municipalities, and only one of the providers showed up. But while in that meeting, the provider did not oppose Stellar Transport's application for a COPCN. They actually even supported them. So here we are today with the public hearing notice, and I have a representative from Stellar, and I'm here for any questions if you have, and we recommend approval.
Any questions for Mr. Burkeen?
I have one. After we've just recently gone through a partial evacuation order in the county, is this provider or any of the other providers, were they part of any potential evacuation plans for any of the assisted living or support facilities where you may have congregate living?
The ALFs, the assisted living facilities, and the congregate cares all have private contracts with providers to move their clients.
Okay.
That's out of our purview. We don't require them to entertain ours.
And I'd have to say after seeing this item come up on our agenda, I seem to see their vehicles prevalent throughout the county.
Then they're providing a quality service. I'm quite impressed with their service. Let me just go and say that their name represents them well.
Right.
They're probably one of the higher providers I've seen in quite a long time.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Burkeen? Thank you, Brian. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this? Anyone from the public wish to comment? There being none, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen?
Move approval.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. The second hearing, continued from the meeting of October 11th, is a final hearing, consideration of amendments to the Land Development Regulations, Chapters 901, Definitions, and 911, Zoning, and 971, Specific Land Use Criteria to establish regulations for medical marijuana treatment centers. Good morning, Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your convenience, I've passed out on the dais hard copies of the PowerPoint presentation. I do want to mention a few things. This is the final hearing for this particular land development regulation amendment. Just a bit of recap for the audience. Coming up next month during the general election, there's an Amendment 2 on the ballot for medical marijuana. If it passes, it could result in dispensaries of medical marijuana locally. Back in April, the board directed staff to update the pain management clinic ordinance, which has been done, and to amend the land development regulations, which is what's before you all this morning. And the rationale there is to address concerns that the board and many other local governments have expressed about some of the potential negative impacts of such uses, and the rationale is to get on our local regulations, on our books, something in place before the amendment, if it passes, has state regulations that could wind up preempting local regulations. But if we have our regulations in place, there's a possibility of being grandfathered in. So that's why we're going through this exercise, similar to what was done in 2014, the last time similar amendment was on the ballot. The proposed ordinance can be adopted by the board now ahead of the election, and if Amendment 2 fails, if it falls short of the 60% support, the board could repeal this regulation. The ordinance does regulate medical marijuana treatment centers, and that's any entity that acquires, transfers, sells, or dispenses medical marijuana. There are strict criteria that are proposed that we reviewed during your previous hearing. Separation distances from schools, child care facilities, parks, major thoroughfares, and basically nowhere near Interstate 95. And when you also In addition, there are regulations that would prohibit drive-through service, limited hours of operation, and special conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission could put on any particular application. And when you look at all the criteria, there's the industrial zoning that's required and all the locational requirements, there are only 2 locations in the unincorporated county, basically where we have industrial zoning along the railroad track south of the city of Vero Beach. 2 parcels, one that would have to access through private property off of 12th Street, and the other is actually a property that's already developed with warehouse type of building, so a tenant space could be converted, again, if they go through the process. Those are the only 2 locations in the unincorporated area of the county, and the municipalities in our area are also looking at regulations that are somewhat similar. Last August, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the ordinance and recommended that you all adopt the ordinance. You held the first hearing on September 20th with a 5-0 vote to bring back the final ordinance. At a final hearing on October 11th, because of the storms, the board did open the hearing and took public comment, but postponed action until today, so you all can take final action today. Only one change to the ordinance that's before you this morning since you saw it last on September 20th, and that was in response to some comment. There was a definition of medical marijuana treatment center, just specified the department. Where caregivers have to be registered with the department, and we went on and clarified that with the help of the county attorney. That now reads Department of Health or a successor agency pursuant to a particular Florida statute. So that helps, we think, and has clarified that. Also, under discussion at September 20th was whether or not cultivation of marijuana is regulated. In this particular ordinance, since it deals only with the treatment centers, it's prohibited specifically in what's before you all this morning. But the county attorney has recommended, and this is in your backup, that you authorize the county attorney to advertise for an amendment to Chapter 315 to clarify without any question that cultivation is prohibited countywide. So we have essentially 2 recommendations for you all this morning. One is to adopt the proposed LDR amendment ordinance that's before you, and the second is to authorize the county attorney to advertise for a public hearing to amend Chapter 315 with respect to cultivation, and then also to make a similar change to the definition of medical marijuana treatment center. Be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Bowling?
Actually, I have one that may fall under Stan or the county attorney. This was asked by a resident, and I told him I would ask this question today. And it's more of the understanding of if something's medical, they don't understand why we have to create a separate set of rules why can't Walgreens, CVS, normal traditional prescription providers be the dispenser? Why are we required to create a whole new distribution process for something that's medical? If it's medical, why can't you get it from your normal pharmacy provider? So if you could kind of maybe walk through what the item that's on the ballot for this year, and not that, just to explain to them why we're creating a separate set of processes.
First off, we're not required to do anything.
Well, true, we're choosing.
From the county perspective is what the board has considered, 1, from a regulatory standpoint, and 2, from a zoning standpoint, is in the event the Florida Constitution were be modified to allow for these medical marijuana treatment centers, and in the face of a potential preemption on those issues, the board thought it would be helpful, Stan and myself also agreed, was it would be helpful to have some sort of regulations in place in the event medical marijuana treatment centers became into being, essentially under the statute. Again, this is important to realize. Marijuana is still illegal. And the various states have been taking different directions on how to regulate, handle these issues in light of the current administration's policy of not very aggressively prosecuting issues relating to marijuana. With regards to the medical issue, I would like to note that there actually is, the Florida statute was actually amended by the Florida legislature last year to allow for medical cannabis in very limited circumstances I think it involved not only your primary care physician or your physician approving it, but a second doctor then authorizing it, and then even then only allowed in certain aspects. I don't know the regulations in terms of why CVS does or doesn't do things, although I assume it has to do with the fact that it still is an illegal substance under the law.
And I'll note that I think going back in time, part of the genesis of this was the pain clinics. So yes, CVS and Walgreens may have been able to distribute the marijuana for medical purposes, but that wouldn't prohibit a whole nother layer of people coming in to service the medical marijuana needs. And they might not all be on the up and up. So this is, as I view it, a way of making sure that we don't end up with a whole new significant problem. And if CVS is actually going to be consistent with some of the other things it's done, it may not want medical marijuana, as that's a smoking type of thing sometimes, like the cigarettes, which they banned as a policy meeting. So they may see this the same way a lot of other people see this, as a way simply to get marijuana widely distributed to the community, as opposed to actually focus on real marijuana needs.
Right.
I'll note that some people say marijuana is good for eyes, but in a recent speech, evidently, an ophthalmologist, Val Zerdans, noted that there are no studies which really show the benefits of it. So again, I think behind this whole medical marijuana push is a lot of other hype to service a whole totally different agenda. And I think that this move with the marijuana clinics helps at least limit to some degree that agenda, which I don't believe personally will be to the benefit of the citizens of Indian River County.
That agenda being just to legalize it?
Eventually, yes, to legalize it. Basically, it's to promote marijuana, not to promote better health.
Well, thank you for the explanation. They were going to be watching today, so they appreciate your answers.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this? Come on up, Mr. Johnson. Name and address for the record, please.
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. The county's doing the right thing on setting aside zoning regulations, which would be applicable if this was ever passed. I think Stan mentioned it was 50%. I think it's 60% to pass. But there's no reason for anybody to, at the ballot, to vote for medical marijuana. As Bob Solari has mentioned, it's a big lie what they're purporting, and there's no reason why anybody at the ballot should vote for medical marijuana because of the separate agenda that's mentioned. So it's as far as the county goes, there's no need for the county to vote for medical marijuana just because we can do it. But what we're doing here today is Stan and the rest of the staff is setting provisions in place in case it is. But for those people that have any misunderstandings about this handout here, is provided by the supervisor of the elections office. It's a handout that tells exactly what people will be voting for when it comes to medical marijuana. There's no indication of how much marijuana is going to be needed to cure some kind of case. It might take several months or something. It may take, but there's no quantitative measure here in the outline. There's no price guarantees. If there's a sales tax, which there would be a sales tax on it, how do you collect sales tax? Right now, no banks select the truck that handles banking transactions is the only way that handles is authorized now. Marijuana can be grown and distributed. It can be grown in Fellsmere and distributed in this location if it's ever passed. So anyway, my recommendation is a lot of other people including Mrs. Ginn and what have you, is to vote no on the ballot.
Bob?
Thank you very much.
I agree with you, but I'm going to take it one step further. As far as I'm concerned, all the constitutional amendments, that's not the way to do legislation. And so I'm agreeing with you. Even though I'm going to vote for this, I'm not going to vote for it on the ballot. As far as amending the state constitution, that's not what it's been in place for 200 years for, in my opinion. It should be done the old-fashioned way, which is find somebody to champion the issue through the House and the Senate and have it signed by the governor, the old-fashioned way.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this issue? Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. Bob McParland, 650 Belfast Terrace, Sebastian, Florida. I want to commend you on taking an initiative for, amending the land development code as it comes to medical marijuana treatment centers. Of course, I'm not going to deny that there is some medicinal purpose for the use of medical marijuana. However, I come from the social services perspective, and I see how it could be overrun similar to the opiate epidemic that happened several years ago, and Florida was so far behind that it took us about 4 years to catch up, not to mention all the kids that were affected. The state of Florida receives over 300,000 abuse reports each and every year, and about 70% of those reports are due to substance abuse by the parents' parts. So I want to congratulate you on taking the initiative. The only, I have a couple questions as far as the thing or considerations possibly. I seen they were talking about, the treatment center could be open on Sundays from 8 to 12. Kind of thinking, really you got to get your marijuana at 8 to 12 on a Sunday morning. I remember, there's several places you can't get alcohol, not that our county is one, on Sunday mornings. But I think if that could be changed. And also I seen in there that I guess the level of their security system is based on the sheriff's recommendations. And wondering if he's going to be reimbursed for that, or is there any cost that can be accrued to the regulation of these treatment centers? Because these treatment centers are going to, put a drain on resources on the social services as well as, the sheriff's office and local municipalities, because now they're going to have additional training as far as somebody who's high on marijuana. So, but once again, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? There being no one else from the public, we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question that Mr. Partland brought up, a very good question. Stan, when we look at how we level impact fees for type of use and impact on services, as a step 2 of this, would we want to look at a category for this? Because I think he's exactly right. The support services that will be required for that type of use will be unique and above normal. I think talking with some commissioners from Colorado, the unintended consequences of what's happened and drain of their resources, there's some history out there we could draw from, but that may be something we want to take a look at. And it may be too early to say of what the sheriff might want to require if he is the one that will be prescribing the security side or approving the facility. At what point would he have to have, is he under the same type of guideline to where he would need to have rules in place prior to adoption versus after? Or what type of time frame should he be looking at to make sure he has something prepared that would be legally defendable?
I mean, looking at the regulations, certainly Stan can comment on this issue as well. I think it's just that the staff was looking for, as someone comes in for permitting review or zoning confirmation or zoning approval, that they're going to have seen that issues or that were raised by the sheriff or analyzed by the sheriff, or the measures that they promote were adopted. Again, we are in a realm right now of guessing ahead of time, ahead of election. So that's really, we're just doing the best we can to guess at what we can implement as a local government.
Right, and I think just to comment on that, we do have a criterion in there, as Mr. McPartland mentioned, that requires review by the sheriff's office, and to the maximum extent possible, they have to design and operate in a manner that incorporates security measures recommended by the sheriff's office. Yeah, this is new territory. We feel that's the best we can do right now. Beside the fact that it is such a narrow range of possibilities 2 parcels in the entire unincorporated area of the county that could potentially be developed there. We're looking at a very narrow window of opportunity for someone, so we won't have
Well, we won't, but
much of a
since
volume.
impact fees are countywide and they're imposed on each of the municipalities, that would give us, because the city will have theirs, all the municipalities would have their own, but they operate under one impact fee structure.
Certainly, and I think fortunately, the municipalities that I'm aware of are limiting very much, where these could go. And we don't have data yet on what those impacts would be. That's the difficult part right now.
Realistically, Commissioner, I think we do have to have some care in how we structure this. I mean, whatever we structure is going to be challenged in the court.
Right.
And we have impact fees for certain things like recreation or traffic or sewer and water type things. And if we make a special higher impact fee for one particular purpose, when we've already regulated it fairly tightly, I think we increase the chances that a judge is going to throw it out. So I think we're on the right track here, and I'd rather we didn't overdo it and get the whole thing tossed out.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
Mr. Johnson, I personally agree with you, and you've come up with some valid points. I believe that it's obvious that we're not looking for this business. Most certainly, the banks have stated clearly that they did not want the business, and I think, by and large, the citizens of Indian River County don't want this business. I've heard from many. But with that, we have to look at the larger picture of the threat of the legislation that may be agreed upon. My input early on was zone it to the adjoining county, and then we got it covered. But Dylan said we couldn't do that. We'd have to allow the governor to do that, or allow the adjoining counties to do that. But I am concerned, but I think that I agree with what P&Z has discussed and approved, and as well as what staff has brought forward. I do have some concerns for the sheriff in the proactive approach, and I wanted the sheriff to weigh in on how this is going to affect, if this goes forward, how it'll affect his resources that he has applied. Sheriff, would you like to weigh in on that as far as getting geared up or having the day-in-day operations? And,
Actually,
what are
as
your
Mr.
thoughts?
Reingold has mentioned, we're 3 weeks away. What you will see will be a groundswell statewide in the other 66 counties that probably have more egregious issues than we do. There will be a template developed, I'm certain. There will be measures in place for law enforcement to police these establishments, and I would be very surprised if there was not legislation presented, as Commissioner Davis said, through the House and through the Senate. If this passes, you'll see this come before those bodies in March as a Band-Aid, if you will, to fix any of the other problems. But I can assure you that law enforcement will be prepared. It will be a statewide issue. It's not isolated to Indian River County.
But it will be an additional burden on your office. And
I would equate it to something similar in the fire district when they have to show recent visits to certain establishments to make sure they're in compliance. It would be something similar to that. Of course, there would probably be some other security measures with alarms and security protection. Perhaps they hire security firms. Perhaps they hire law enforcement. Who knows?
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
This discussion has probably just been paled by Roe v. Wade. I mean, it's a common topic. It's discussed every day throughout the county in various capacities. And I know that at least 2 of us, the chairman and myself, have been visitors to Colorado. No, there was no involvement. But I will say that, and on separate occasions, of course, but I will say that when you get into Colorado, you know you're in Colorado. That's about where it goes. It's definitely a socioeconomic change. It's a philosophy, and I think that they have some regrets in their decision as well, but we have to have a proactive approach before we get there with the possibility that we may be there.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Anyone else? If we have a motion on this, I'd like to take it in two parts. The first is to adopt the LDR. The second will be to advertise for the public hearing to amend Chapter 315. Gentlemen, on the adoption of the LDR.
Move to adopt the LDR.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Davis. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Be happy to accept the motion.
Authorize the county attorney to advertise for a public hearing to amend Chapter 315.
Second.
That's a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. At this point, I'd just like to remind people that at 10:30, we have a time-certain attorney-client session relating to Indian River County's petition to administrative hearing challenging the St. Johns River Water Management District's notice of intent to issue an environmental resource permit. These things are rare. It's called a shade meeting, and it's about the only time when commissioners can discuss something out of the public eye. But as it is a time certain, wherever we are at 10:30, I'll break up the meeting so that we can go into the shade meeting.
And that's required by law.
That is required by law. So we'll move and continue on to public discussion items. The first one from 10B is 10B1's request to speak from the Laurels Community Association, Inc. regarding much-needed repairs in our community, entrance repairs, sidewalks repairs, regrading of 4,000 Block 9th Lane for proper drainage. And I'll ask if there's anyone from the Laurels Community Association who'd like to speak on this. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Michael McCann. I live at 4049th Place. I'm the president of the Laurels Homeowners Association. We're a deed-restricted community. I have a petition, if you want to call it that was signed by 103 out of our 109 residents requesting this work to be done. We've been in contact with Roads and Bridges, and this has been an ongoing issue for over a year now. And our understanding is that the work required exceeds what they're allowed to do, other than, you know, putting in the patches, that sort of thing. It's not working on the entrance anymore. I have photos on a thumb drive. I don't know how to use it, though, for your...
He does.
Some of the other issues that we're want to address is the entranceway. There's 33 patches in an area that is 15 by 10 feet. Basically, there's no road left there. It's just a series of patches. Mr. Zork is familiar with the area. This is an area where the work that we're requesting has already been done in another street. That's on 34th Terrace, I believe, where they repaired the entranceway after they put in a new road. Yeah, that's the corner of, that's another road. That's 34th Terrace and 8th Street. That's a little bit further down from us. That is, I believe, 37th and 8th. You go through a few more, we can get to 39th. This is sidewalks inside our development. We're requesting handicap access ramps be placed. Currently, in order for individuals in our community to go through the community, they have to go down the streets, go across somebody's driveway, go up the next driveway, and then come back up the street in order to go down 39th Ave. This is an issue that we're having on the 4,000 block of 9th Lane, where the drain at the end of the cul-de-sac, what's happened is the surface of the road has gotten below the grade of the drain in the cul-de-sac, and the water will sit there for up to 7 days before it'll leave. That's another picture of it. This photo was taken 7 days after the rain, and as you can see, the water's still sitting there. It won't go away. Here's some of the issues that we're having with the sidewalks. Roads and Bridges came out approximately 2 months, 3 months ago and placed some cones where the sidewalks were like 2 inches difference where they butt together from, obviously from settlement. And they've never come back to complete the work. They said that there's funding issues, and they recommended that we come before the County Board of Commissioners to arrange for funds to be diverted to correct these areas. As you can see from the grindings, they have come out in the past and attempted to adjust the sidewalk so that there's not a lip, and they've continued to move. And what we're asking is that some of these be broken out and be repoured. And once again, Roads and Bridges says that that's work that exceeds their budget. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that everything that was on there? Okay. That's the only one where there's a cone because when the hurricane came, most of the people didn't do anything with the cones and they're gone. Otherwise, we would have showed you more cones in the area. Thank you. So basically what we're requesting is a repair to the entranceway, similar to the repair that was done on 34th Terrace in the past. We'd like sidewalks with handicap access ramps put in them so that individuals who live in the community that need those ramps don't have to go down the street to cross the street. They can just stay on the street.
Bless you.
We'd like the sidewalks repaired, as you saw the pictures. And we'd like to have the 4400 block of 9th Lane regraded so that it will drain properly. We've had St. John's River Water Management sent an engineer in, and he said the issue is not with the soils. The soils are functioning properly. That the road has settled and has gone below the grade of the drain. And we're asking the county to authorize Roads and Bridges to make the necessary repairs.
Thank you. Which would you say is the priority for the community?
I would say for the community, the priority is to address the road on 9th Lane, the 4400 block of 9th Lane.
I'm sorry, the which on 9th Lane?
9th Lane, it's the 4400 block, or the 4000 block, I'm sorry.
The entranceway?
No, that's the cul-de-sac at the end where the water won't drain. I would say that, the handicap ramp, and the entrance. The entrance, I think, is a priority, because that's an ongoing issue. That's patched almost monthly. And like I said, there's a section of that road that isn't a road anymore. It's just a series of patches connected to each other. It's just deteriorated that bad.
I can't speak for the other commissioners. I don't know that we'd be able to get everything done in 1 year. I mean, we did tighten up during the Great Recession for years, and we're still catching up on maintenance issues throughout the county. But I certainly wouldn't mind if there was a motion to ask the Public Works Director to try to assess the worst problems and see if he can come back with some recommendation. So.
I'm assuming this is all public though, right? I mean,
no, we're a deed restricted community, but these are all public roads,
right.
public
Roads
sidewalks.
are public,
yes.
yeah.
Rich Berka, Public Works Director. The roads are public, the drainage is private.
Okay.
So I'm concerned, I would like to have time to assess the drainage issue on the culvert. Yes, there's some water standing in the road, but the amount of water I saw that pickup truck running through, I don't believe that the roadway has settled that much to provide that volume of water. So I need to assess more of the drainage issue. Yes, there's water in the road. It's possible that the asphalt has settled along the curb. It's not getting into the pipe. The pipe looks relatively new, but it may, because it appears to be ADS pipe, so we'll look into that further. But I need time to assess that issue. The remaining issues we'll look at and address accordingly.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Fletcher.
I mean, this is a public speaking request. I believe that Rich has brought up a very valid point. He needs a little bit more. I don't know your sentiments, but I believe that if Rich was able to take a week or two to look at this and make more determination, we might be able to bring back a stronger, well-founded, supportable.
I think that'd be appropriate.
So, I don't know, I guess we can
We
use
just need a consensus on this one?
Mr. Chairman, let me add two pieces of information. Before Rich, where you had took over and Chris was here, one thought he had, if he was going to be doing a millings project near there where they were going to be grinding a roadway where they could potentially drive the grinder down to the entry street, grind that, and then repave that section. And I don't know if the timing ever just didn't work out right. Now Chris is not here, and I don't know if we have anything in the area. That was one thought that Chris had on dealing with the entryway. On the drainage streets, it's not just the one street. It seems to be the worst in the northwest corner of the community. But it is on a couple of them that are to the south also seem to back up, because and just for clarification, I do live in that area, but on a different street, closer to 8th Street and east of the area, so I'm not on the affected portion. But and it doesn't have to be a huge rain. It can be a normal Thursday afternoon thunderstorm that comes through, and I'll drive down to the end, and you'll see the water where that truck was parked. Yes. When it's not a major storm event, that they'll happen at the smaller rainfall. But it's also one street, at least one street to the south of that also has some backup issues, and I don't know what it's related to.
Yeah, that would be my street, 9th Place.
Okay. Yeah. What's the furthest one to the north?
The furthest one to the north is 9th Lane, then 9th Place, 8th Lane, 8th Place. That's as you come in from south to north.
Okay. But it may be that the three to the northwest of 39th, when you're looking at it, to look at what's contributing that. There was a pipe connection to Annabelle's to the west that we thought was contributing last year, and then that got remedied to some degree.
Yes, that pipe has
still
been
exists.
removed. Yeah, that is what one of the engineers said may have caused the problem with the road settling, is that 10-inch pipe that came in from behind the Laurels development that wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
When that pipe was put in, it was put in below the grade of the soils in the Laurels, so that 5 or 6 acre swamp area had to drain before the Laurels area would drain. And according to the engineers, waste management trucks coming in when that area was saturated is what caused the road to push it down.
So maybe if Rich has some time to, and I would say with your current backlog of both debris removal and other storm-related activities, that it might take a little while, but if you could work it into your schedule matrix, just like we do for issues that Ms. Scott brings up for her area. I stopped counting at 50 rusted culverts on 8th Street that were similar to the ones in Gifford, and I know we'll get to those as we get to them. They're not immediate issues, but the drainage and the entryway, I know that they have been good about patching it, but it is a smorgasbord of patches. It's not just a giant patch.
We'll look into it.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to limit Rich to the scope of 1 week, and I want you to know that, but I believe that we need to do that to ensure the best address. You don't want a Band-Aid on this. You want to get it so it's right.
Right.
And then we'll be able to discuss it and make that determination.
Okay. If I could add one other thing.
Sir.
I'm sorry. when you ask me the priority, I think the safety priority should take precedent, and that would be getting the sidewalks so that people aren't tripping on them. I mean, the other things are nuisances and inconveniences, and they should be addressed, but I think the sidewalk issue is actually a safety issue where one sidewalk is an inch or 2 inches below the next step. Because we have people in our community that need walkers, that are elderly, that have issues walking, and I don't want to see somebody get caught on one of those.
Thank you. I believe Rich has his marching orders, so if there's nothing else, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, well, sure, we'll see you again when we address some of these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Looking.
And I understand, but we can give Ms. Scott a chance. Ms. Scott, if you'd like to come up for your matters, but at 10:30, I will be hammering the gavel to move to the shade meeting. I just wanted to give you that notice in advance. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. It's Wanda Scott, 4306 26th Avenue. And give me just 2 seconds. Now I'm ready. What I want to focus today is the recap of Gifford during the storm, some of our highlights and some of our strengths and some of the things that I think we missed or we dodged a bullet. Can you hear me? It
Yes,
just
ma'am.
sounds so low. I wanted to determine how some of the support services helped Gifford. How did the emergency plan help during and after the storm? What contingency plan was available either through the Gifford Neighborhood Plan or the County Emergency Management Plan? You don't have to answer anything, just let me kind of get through the list, and then I got quite a bit. The 5-year comprehensive plan, how have all of these elements needed and ordered for a natural disaster that the governor had determined that the state of Florida and our county was in a state of emergency. How much money is allocated for the emergency for the Gifford Neighborhood Plan to take care of these emergencies? What plan did the county use during and after the storm? Does the current 2014 neighborhood plan have all of the infrastructures identified as a priority, such as the culvert replacements, street lighting, power line poles replaced and upgraded from wood to concrete, or either some type of standard that would handle the type of wind force that we had? Proper repairs, schedule monthly maintenance, timely new equipment improvement. Is this the most effective Gifford neighborhood plan when it regards to imminent danger? And when I say imminent danger, I mean any conditions or practices in any place of employment which are such that a danger exists which could reasonably be expected to cause death or serious physical harm immediately or before the imminence of such danger can be eliminated through the enforcement. And I started talking about that a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to talk about responsibilities of agents. Well, no, I'm going to hold up here. I wanted to, I was beating up the stormwater drain, David Gunther's department, but I have to give him an attaboy because of him dredging, or his staff dredging the canals. We had minimum flooding. I think only one area, which was 40th Avenue and 46th Street, and that was Pine View, but just one area. Normally that area is flooded, completely. We were able to drive down the streets immediately after we were released, I think about 9 o'clock that morning, drive up throughout in the area. So attaboy for the county of the improvements, because for years and years that area has been bad. So minimum problems in the Pine View area, which is off of 40th Avenue, and it leads to 49th Street.
Ms. Scott, this might be a good, if we can break in the list, Commissioner, I didn't know my,
I had another minute, but that's, you have 10:30?
I have 10:30
Okay,
on
Ms.
my-
Scott, my apologies, but we have a shade meeting, which is a time certain event, so we have to break up your portion today. And I've got a paragraph to read before we go into the shade meeting.
We'll should be able to finish up after the shade meeting.
Oh, yes.
Oh, absolutely. We're
Okay.
not, we're just interrupting for the shade meeting, but we'll be
So
back
pro-
here after the shade meeting.
So we're looking at about an hour, 45 minutes?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half? Oh, okay, excellent. Thank you.
So with that, I'll read the statement dealing with the shade meeting. This is the commencement of the attorney-client session. The estimated time of the closed attorney-client session is 90 minutes. Present at the meeting will be Commissioners Joseph E. Flesher, Vice Chairman, Wesley S. Davis, Tim Zork, Peter D. O'Brien, and myself, Bob Solari, Chairman. Also present will be the County Attorney Dylan Reingold, County Administrator Jason E. Brown, and a certified court reporter. At the conclusion of the closed attorney-client session, this public meeting will be reopened. The public meeting is hereby reopened, and the attorney-client session is now terminated. Now, before we left, we thought this might take as much as 90 minutes, and it went shorter than we thought, so a couple people who were here for public speaking aren't back yet. I just want to state that we'll be happy to hear them later on in the agenda, and just in order to facilitate the flow of things, we may jump around a little bit. And Mr. Paladin, I'll give you a chore. If Ms. Scott comes in and she's worried about not being able to speak, if you please tell her that we'll certainly get to her later on. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Deputizing.
And I think that there are people here for the utility services approval of bid award, so I'm going to pass that at the present time and move on to something that won't impact any of the people who were here. So
Did you want to do?
I guess that's what we're going to do, is we'll go to Jason debris and then into the two solid waste items.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. I just want to provide a brief update on debris where we are. As you know, we began our special pickup with our outside contractor on Thursday. We had limited crews on Thursday and Friday. However, beginning on Saturday, we had 7 crews working. And those trucks had an average capacity of over 100 cubic yards. So if Scott can go to, I've got some pictures of some of the trucks there scattered about it, maybe the next one. So you can see there's that truck has a self-loading grapple on the back of it, and then it's towing a trailer behind it. So we had some rather large equipment out there. So when I say 7 trucks, it's 7 large capacity trucks. The hauling capacity averaged over 100 cubic yards. Ceres is our contractor. We have 2 emergency contractors approved for debris removal. Ceres is our primary, and Ashbrit is our secondary. So we can deploy either of those or both of those as needed. So for this storm, based on the impact, we've deployed Ceres as our primary. They have some trucks of their own. They have some subcontractors that they're using. So those trucks are rather large in capacity. That way they can fill up and spend less time driving back and forth to the debris site where they have to dump those.
Jason, could you, just for reference, where those photos were, this is not the 43rd Avenue site that the city's working, where there's been some smoke complaint issues.
That is correct. That's a good point, Commissioner Zork. So our site, we have 2 approved debris sites. One is on Oslo Road, west of Enios and MWI, there near the county's landfill property. Scott's got the pointer on that, and it's shown on the map there, and those concentric circles emanate from that. We also have another approved site, which is the fairgrounds. We're not using that. The city of Vero is using the property on 43rd Avenue on the west side of Dodgertown, and we're using an air curtain incinerator there. There were some smoke complaints. My understanding is their burning operations have temporarily halted right now, but we did get some complaints over the weekend from that, but that is the city's operation. Each of these sites has to be approved by DEP and FEMA. So we have gone through that process, and the site that we were working on there is the Oslo one, distinct from the city of Vero. City of Sebastian has a site of their own at their airport as well, is my understanding. So as of today, we have 3 more trucks in town, so we've got a total of 10 trucks operating today, and we're expecting 2 more tomorrow. That will get us up to 12 trucks. So just a little summary of what our collections were. On Saturday, we collected, the haulers collected 2,400 cubic yards of debris. Sunday, that went up to 2,700. Yesterday, we were a little over 3,400 cubic yards. Our total to date is 9,349 total cubic yards. Just as a matter of comparison, our normal yard waste collections over at the Enios site are, we track those in tons, but when you convert them to cubic yards, it's about 10 or 11,000 cubic yards a week. This last week, that doubled, so they brought in about 20,000 cubic yards, but the increase of about 10,000 or 11,000 cubic yards, just want to point that out. That's from all the folks bringing the stuff to their convenience centers, or their landscapers bringing the stuff in, Waste Management dropping stuff off. FDOT is bringing stuff from the state roads like A1A, bringing their debris in. All of that's about an extra 10 or 11,000 cubic yards and in a week, and our debris haulers picked up about 9,300 over 5 days, really 3 of which were the most productive. We are doing public roads first. The reason for that is logistics. We need to keep the debris piles separate for FEMA reimbursement purposes. If we commingle those, if you have a truck is half full of public roads and half full of private roads, how do you know it's half full? How do you know it's not 80-20, 70-30? And so you got to keep everything separate. That also gives time to allow folks to get their right of entry forms into us, where we have those available on the county's website at ircrecycles.com. Or you can also get there from the county's main page right up front. You can get to those. There's a paper form that one can fill out, or you can do the form online and submit it to us online. So we have an online form where that can be filled out by the president of a homeowners association, if there is a homeowners association. If not, the individual property owners can fill those out. So we've gotten about 100, as of yesterday, about 190 of those received. So when we get that first pass done on the public roads, then we'll move to the private roads. Right now, our rough estimate, and I still emphasize this is a rough estimate, is maybe about 60,000 cubic yards that we have to pick up. That's a little more than the initial estimate we received, which was 38,000 cubic yards. So the job's a little bit bigger than initially thought. We are asking folks to be patient. It's going to take time to get there. We will be doing this for the next few weeks to get all of these done. What we're planning to do, it's not there yet, but planning to get a map on the county website to show residents the progress, to show the neighborhoods where we have picked up or where we are picking up, and also placing potentially a thermometer style indicator a la what the United Way does. If you'll see, your United Way has their fundraising goals, and just kind of gives folks an indication of how far we think we are towards the goal. And then that combined with the map can give residents a little bit of idea of, okay, well, maybe they're coming for me a little sooner to get rid of some of that angst of I don't know when they're going to be here. So just to talk a little more about what we have completed, so you see those different colored boxes there. Those are various different zones. I think there's about 44 different zones throughout the unincorporated area. Another thing I want to be clear, the cities handle their own debris. In the unincorporated area, we've got 44 zones. Some of those that have been completed are Zone 42, which is the Vero Highlands area and Florida Ridge, some of that stuff. Also Zone 36, which is Oslo Road, from Oslo Road to 13th Street Southwest, from 27th Avenue to 58th Avenue, Grosvenor Estates, some developments in that area. We also had them run up 27th Avenue south of the city limits because there were a lot of debris piles in the drainage swales there, and we wanted to get those done. We had them get in there on Sunday when the traffic was a little bit lighter, because as you saw, those trucks are very large. If they're operating in 27th Avenue, you have more traffic during the weekdays, so we wanted to get in there, do that. Where are they working right now? Vero Lake Estates, they've been working in there for quite some time. If you look at the map, it's kind of split into two zones. I was told that they are pretty almost finished with that Zone 6, which is from 85th Street north, and then next they'll go to the southern portion of VLE there. Also continue to work in the southern part of the county in Vero Shores, River Shores, some of that US 1 area. Also State Road 60 to 26th Street, 43rd Avenue to 58th Avenue, and also moving a little north of that Grosvenor Estates zone from 1st Street Southwest to Oslo 27th to 58th Avenue. As they check those off, and as we get more crews, we'll be able to expand geographically where we're responding. Do want to point out we need help from folks. I've seen debris piled up on the side of the road where there's no houses or no streets or anything, so a lot of times something may be picked up somewhere else and left on the side of the road. I had a picture in there of some debris along 43rd Avenue there. So if you look there to the left is a farm's drainage canal with no crossing. That's on 43rd Avenue. There's some houses across the west. I don't think they took their stuff across 43rd Avenue, so somebody's dumped that there from a different place. Also, I've seen a couple of, had some reports of some big orange trucks that do this for a living that are supposed to pick up their things that are continuing to drop debris in the right-of-way, so we've got to work with some folks on that. We're aware that there's a chop and drop program in the immediate after response to the storm, but we need some help from those folks. I think they're getting paid by folks to do some clearing, and that job they're getting paid for includes taking the stuff to the landfill, which is free in our community, and there is a charge for larger logs, which we have waived during this time period. And we do continue to have the 5 customer convenience centers and the landfill open. So,
Jason, are the convenience centers back to their regular hours now?
We are back to regular hours. We had some extra hours last week. We've been and we appreciate Republic working with us. They had to really strain to get there because they have some hour limits on their drivers, and they were reaching those limits. But the volume has begun to drop off there a little bit, so we have agreed with Republic to return to the normal hours for the convenience centers.
Jason, I want to thank you, our attorney's office, and all of the staff. By the end of the business day, you all had that form ready, and we notified the media, and everything that we had discussed that morning was accomplished by the end of the business day, and I want to say thank you. I know it took a lot of cooperative effort. You said that we had a response on the request for pickup. It's been monitored. You said that we had a response on the request for pickup.
It's bad enough I got to hear it once.
I think that was a retake.
That goes in more than one direction, Commissioner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. No. With that, we've had a moderate response on the request for pickup. Was that primarily subdivisions as opposed to individuals, or it's a combination?
We've had folks, we had the request for pickups in the private roads, and we're gonna get there once we get those forms in. We'll do the public roads first. We do have our regular debris hauler, Waste Management, in the unincorporated area, and Fellsmere is going through and picking stuff up as well. They're not able to get everything, and that's not any blame on them. Their contract really provides for the normal amount of waste, so they've been going out there and picking that stuff up too.
And I think I was present with you during that discussion about the chop and drop program for the orange trucks. And I believe that they carry a device right behind it that they customarily use to grind and then bring out to the appropriate area. I can't comprehend why on an emergent matters, I mean, emergency would be 1 or 2 cited situations, but when they're coming through the community, I think they need to digest what they're cutting, so that, because we will be doing pickup at various sites, and then there might be additional drop down, and I believe that the citizens might believe that their vegetative waste was not picked up, that it's being dropped by the orange trucks. So yes, I do have the same concern too.
And I was just made aware of the volume of that last night, so I haven't had a chance to reach out to folks there, but we will be reaching out to try and get that rectified, because the residents think, oh, they haven't picked anything up because stuff keeps appearing on the road, and it also slows us down in getting to that next zone in those next neighborhoods where people haven't seen our trucks yet.
It's promulgating a lot of phone calls, inquiries, requests, and concerns.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We'll now move to the Solid Waste Disposal District. The first is the CCNA 2014 Work Order Number 5 to GeoSyntech for Title V Air Operation Permit Renewal. And we're going to have Mr. Burke lead us off. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. First item is the Title V Air Operation Permit per the Clean Air Act. There are some regulations that we have to comply with, specifically some acronyms that you may or may not be familiar with, the non-methane organic compounds, NMOC. There is a reduction in the amount of generation rates that can be done for landfills, going from what used to be a 50 megagrams per year down to 34 megagrams per year. Landfills must estimate their emission rate every 5 years as part of the Title V Clean Air Act requirement. And it must be noted that there are specific industrial, emission reduction criteria that can be done if landfills choose to do so. Indian River County has already opted to do those with some of the flare systems that are in place, as well as capturing the methane gas and sending it over to INEOS. So if that were to be done as part of the Tier 2 analysis, Indian River County is ahead of the curve in terms of some of those industrial emission requirements that need to be met. But this is just a work order broken into several tasks on page 335 of your agenda item, sum totaling $64,107 to the consultant, GeoSyntech, as part of the continuing services agreement. So staff would recommend that the board authorize the chairman to sign the attached work order for $64,107 to look at some of the items as described in more detail on their attached work order, the Tier 2 testing and the Title V renewal permit application. Again, I'm available if there are any questions, if the board has any for me.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Burke?
Yes, sir.
One or two. Do they do a reoccurring test annually at the same point in time, or is it, how is it collected, or is it partially collected month and then a cumulative total made up, or how do
We do some flare testing. We do some emission testing as well. The DEP can come up and do a compliance evaluation inspection testing where they look at some of the past data, they look at some of the well fields, and so we do provide that to them. But typically, this is required every 5 years to where we can track some of the baseline from before, look at the additional tonnage, some of the methane generation that has accrued prior to that landfill material that's starting to decompose. And especially like at Old Gifford landfill, you can actually see the concentrations sometimes peak and then drop off as the years go by with the cell has been closed. So we do some continued testing per the DEP requirements.
And I don't know if it's just coincidence, but there do seem to be certain months out of the year where the odor is much more noticeable. And I don't know if that's either humidity, temperature, what all can be contributing factors, but there are times when you do the 95 drive and you pass, the St. Lucie, the Palm Beach, and you always know when you're near one.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with biological systems it's going to vary depending on the amount of material that's brought to the open face, the type of material that's in there, and then whether or not we are flaring or if we're sending some of that methane over to INEOS. But yes, there are certain days that are better than others depending on the wind direction as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? Chair will be happy to entertain a motion.
Staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. 15B2, which was an emergency item which was added, which is the 8th Amendment to the Feedstock Supply Agreement. Mr. Burke.
Again, as the county administrator pointed out, we are getting material from the convenience centers, from Ceres, the contracted hauler, and from FDOT. This agreement has been put together very well between Himanshu, the administrator, and the county attorney's office. We do not have a signature block on the agreement with FDOT, but in the agenda item it notifies that we'd like the board to ratify and approve the attached draft agreement that authorizes the chair to execute the agreement, upon final review and approval by the county attorney. This is for the agreement between Indian River County and the Florida Department of Transportation that's cleaning some of the hurricane debris along A1A state roadways and bringing it to the landfill at a negotiated rate of $24.48 per ton.
Move staff recommendation.
Motion from Commissioner Fleischer.
I'll second that with one clarification, that the DOT is item 15B3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
that's the DOT.
Like a housekeeping.
I was on the wrong one.
Housekeeping, but I'll second that.
Yeah.
So, and I'll just note that I think Himanshu did a great job getting this agreement done so quickly, and I'd like to thank FDOT for moving along so quickly. It's rare, and I am going to wonder where the rest of the paperwork is, though. I've never seen an FDOT item.
Without 100 pages.
Yeah,
or
without 100
something,
pages and in triplicate, so.
That's because it's our agreement as opposed to their agreement.
Well, yeah.
That would have taken a little bit longer.
It'd be wonderful if we could write most of the agreements then.
We may need to attach an exhibit still.
Well, thank you very much. So we have the motion from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Burke, your final item.
I'm sorry for the mix-up, my fault on that one, item 15B2, the 8th Amendment to the Feedstock Agreement with INEOS, again, through the executive order issued by Governor Rick Scott and the local state of emergency as declared here by the county administrator. There is now the 8th Amendment ahead of you on page, let's see, the agenda item, 8th Feedstock Agreement to solidify the yard waste processing between Indian River County Solid Waste Disposal District and INEOS. So we recommend that the board obviously give the chairman authorization to sign on their behalf, ratify and approve the attached draft 8th Amendment upon final review and approval by the county attorney's office. Again, this is for the yard waste processing of the material that has been generated above and beyond what has normally done produced on a weekly basis that had been talked about earlier. Again,
Go ahead and move staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Burke.
okay, thank you.
Now we'll go back to public discussion items. We will move to the request to speak from Brian Heddy regarding elected official doing the right thing. Mr. Heddy, name and address for the record, please.
How you doing? Brian Heddy, Vero Beach, Florida. I asked to be on the agenda, and the agenda item is doing the right thing. I've been here a couple of times recently, and basically have asked the same thing, that the commissioners just do the right thing. And the two issues that I've been speaking on involve turtle lights and commercial events. At the last meeting, I held up a picture. In fact, I put it on the overhead, but I know that it didn't come out on television. Public never saw it. But basically what it was a blank black screen with one tiny minuscule little white dot way off in the distance. And that was supposedly a turtle violation. And your staff said it's no big deal because it's only $50 per light for the fine. Well, it might be no big deal for the staff to have one of our taxpayers, one of our residents pay $50 per light, but it's a significant issue to the homeowner. Not only the money, but the principle. And the turtle ordinance is to protect turtles, to not light up the beach. And as I told you at the last meeting, the turtle, in order to even see that light, would have to climb a 6-foot ladder. And I don't think many turtles have 6-foot ladders. But besides that, it just doesn't meet the threshold of a violation to have a light off 2 lots down and not lighting up the beach at all. You talked earlier about fiscal responsibility, and this issue kind of fits into that category in terms of fiscal responsibility because you're spending tax dollars. This is a cost. Having me here is a cost. You all get paid, staff gets paid, and it's all tax dollars. And when I look at some of the expenditures, you know, I tell you, I just shake my head in disbelief. Why do you want to spend legal fees on something that is not a violation? And I don't know what the political reasons behind attacking the homeowners is. The one homeowner claims that she's being cited because it's a discrimination. She's a Cuban American, and whether or not that has anything to do with it, I certainly don't know. But I do know that that spending our tax dollars on charging her with violations that clearly don't meet the threshold, the test for a violation. But I suppose that it's minuscule in terms of dollars. If you look at some of these other things, here's dollar amounts: $25,000, $333,000, $34,000, $184,000. Here's a bottom line of over $2 million. And this is all tax dollars being spent. These particular items are lawsuits. These are lawsuits that you county commissioners are engaged in, but we taxpayers have to pay the bill. And these two particular, you have no chance of winning at all. And should these homeowners pursue, I think the same is true, that you have zero chance of winning. The only thing you're going to do is cost the homeowners some money, and you're going to cost the taxpayers some money. At the last meeting, one of the commissioners said that he has it right here, and he held up a document from a web page that was the county's evidence. And the web page talked about a future event. The date on the document that the commissioner held up was June the 3rd, and the offense supposedly happened on June the 4th. That's what she was written up for. And I don't know how a document out on the 3rd can possibly be evidence of a future violation. But anyway, she was brought up on having a commercial violation at her home on June the 4th, and she went before the Commission's board, the Code Enforcement Board, on June the 27th. And they referred back to, and I've been told at this meeting, that the vacation rentals, they're pretty specific, and it says compliance, and it identifies things you can and can't do. And the June 4th violation actually was before the June 21st approval of the ordinance you're saying she violated. Well, you can't on June the 4th violate an ordinance which hasn't even been passed yet. If you go to the code enforcement hearing, they refer to this vacation rental rules.
Mr. Teddy, on that one, I think you're confusing two different ordinances.
And Commissioner, sorry, I've got the.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What Mr. Hetty is referring to is the ordinance that was passed this summer regarding vacation rentals. What the citation was dealing with was commercial events at residence, which was a violation of ordinance 2015-013, which was adopted and enacted by the board in September 2015. So that was prior to the June 4th date referenced by Mr. Hetty.
And if you go back and you look at the code enforcement meetings and the minutes of the meetings, they referred back to the June 21st ordinance. The code enforcement meeting was actually on the 27th, 6 days after this. But if you go back to the ordinance that you speak of, there's a commercial event prohibition, and the June 21st talks about the commercial events and the elements of a commercial event. The county, on the 3rd, the day before this supposed violation, the county got together, involved 4 or 5 county staff, and a code enforcement officer was sent out on Saturday to go take pictures and go get the evidence for this violation. And on Monday, the email from that code enforcement officer that was out there said that the only violation was a sea turtle light. The code enforcement officer went out and in the email to management, again, said that the only violation was a sea turtle violation. And it turns out that the sea turtle violation, the proof of that was a photograph that was taken at 8 o'clock at night, and the sea turtle ordinance doesn't even go into effect until 9 o'clock at night. So, you know, it just doesn't make sense to continue this. The county attorney said, well, they imposed no fine on her. And that's true. They didn't impose a fine. But what they did do is convict her of something that she didn't do. She rented out her house as a vacation rental, which is permissible under the law. When the county staff went out to see whether or not this was really a commercial event and tried to document the elements of a commercial event, staff was not able to find any elements of a commercial event. But they charged her anyway, and the reason, if you go back and you look, you find that a county commissioner who's running for office right now was involved in this at the get-go. And, you know, abuse of power is something that we shouldn't, any of us, shouldn't have to put up with. Elected officials or people on the public payroll abusing their power.
Mr. Hetty?
Yes.
You have referenced that a commissioner got involved, and this is abuse of power. I can tell you our commissioners receive code enforcement complaints every day from citizens across our county to let them know, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Flesher, Commissioner Zork, I've seen a violation in my community. Can you help me with it? And oftentimes that commissioner then forwards that on to staff, and the code enforcement staff then analyzes that. That's one of the methods by which we're able to find out about issues. And so for a commissioner to hear about it and forward that information on to staff is not irregular, not abuse of power, and I think it's very consistent with how things work in this county.
And I would agree, that's the way things normally happen. People catch commissioners in grocery stores, they see them in the neighborhood. You know, I think it's the way government should work. You know, somebody has a problem, they may see a county official, they may see a county commissioner, and they say, hey, I'm having this problem. The commissioners, as they should, forward that to staff to handle it. So this is normal operating procedure, no special treatment here.
Well, a couple of things in response. With regard to the county attorney, the county commissioners receive complaints every day. So then I would, under public records, open public records, I would request all of the complaints from last Tuesday to today that the county commissioners received. I'd like a copy of each one. I think that's probably not true. It's probably an exaggeration. With respect to the county administrator, I would agree that if a citizen has a complaint and spots a county commissioner, that they're certainly free to address that. But if you look at the timeline on this particular case, an email between one of the county commissioners, Mr. Solari, and a resident said that there was an unknown male walking on the street who he spoke to, and he talked about an event, but he didn't have any name. He didn't know who he was talking to. If you look at the internal communication, you see that an anonymous call came in to the Code Enforcement Board after that email to Mr. Solari. And I don't think you have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out that when a county commissioner receives a complaint from a citizen, and the next day an anonymous call comes in. I don't think it was anonymous at all. I think it was Mr. Solari that called the Code Enforcement Board, because all of a sudden 6 employees in total.
Mr. Teddy?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stop you right there on that one, because
Yeah.
that's just an absolutely nonsensical idea that I called code enforcement on it. And I just want to straighten that out.
Well, you say it's a nonsensical idea.
It is, and you know, you've gone beyond the normal bounds of.
Here's the nonsensical idea, Mr. Solari. The nonsensical idea is that an abuse of power by an elected official. Now, I don't believe for a second that an anonymous telephone call.
Mr. Hetty, you've spoken for 15 minutes today. You've spoken for plenty of time on this same issue in past meetings. Is there some way you can bring up something new or summarize, or as opposed to repeating the same allegations over and over again?
Well, you know, deflect and
Mr. Chairman,
and
change
the topic, deflect. As I was saying to Mr. Solari, I don't believe for a second that an anonymous telephone call to the Code Enforcement Board about an unknown person walking down the street constitutes a complaint for which we get several county employees all of a sudden working on it, on which we get Code Enforcement Boards sent out. If you look at the timeline and the number of people that were involved on a so-called anonymous call from an unknown person reporting something that another unknown person told them, it's pretty clear that all of these people weren't unknown. Either that, or you have a Code Enforcement Board that have a whole lot of people kicking around doing nothing.
And thank you, Mr. Hetty.
You know, I just have to say, you know, I'm listening to this independently. I've heard some aspersions towards one commissioner. I'm not here to defend that one commissioner. But I just want, you know, I know that you were in elective office at one time. And I know that you've had contact with individuals when you go to a grocery store or a gas station or a barber shop, correct? and they may say, you know.
Well, barber shop, not so much.
Well, maybe not so frequently now, okay, but you used to go a lot more often. Anyway, I mean, I'll go along with you, but you got rid of this. But the point remains that our constituents will say something. They want anonymity. They don't want to have reprisal from their neighbor. And when we hear that, we do have an obligation. And I will tell you, as our county administrator has said and our county attorney has said, that they are aware of many times where we may come in and say, you know, there's this location, it came in anonymous. It came in anonymous. People don't even want to call sometimes, but when they see us, they feel they have an obligation to tell us. And when that information is brought forward, we don't type out emails sometimes. It's a day-to-day operations. Many of these things get vetted out, and they're not, they have to be vetted out because, quite frankly, some of them are serious allegations, and some of them are just arbitrary, capricious, stick waving at one neighbor to another. We get that. But we can't intervene and intercede in that action. We have to allow that to be looked at by the most appropriate staff. And I think that's what happened here. And I think that this thing may have like just a touch of political flavor to it. And I'm reaching now, right? But, and again, we're not seeing the person who this was alleged to. You're here.
I'm here representing
as
her,
a representative.
Mr. Fletcher, yes.
And I understand that. And I appreciate that. And this is the public forum. But I just want to let you know that we do get quite a few calls. If you want, I invite you to go grocery shopping with me.
No, thanks.
Then what? Well, no, I'm not going to buy you groceries, but you will be exposed to the immediate contact that you get on a daily basis. That, you know what, I truly appreciate it because the public doesn't have the time, as you do, to come to a meeting that maybe perhaps they just, you know what, I want to talk about something. And I allot that time because I am grateful that we have that time and the opportunity to be able to receive the information and correct a public wrong. And I believe that's might have what has happened here. And I did see that documentation, and I was committed, and I said to you that I would review everything. And after doing so, Mr. Hetty, I have to say that the commissioner that waved that piece of paper in front of you, that was fact. And I got a chance to look at some other facts and some existence and some plans and some documentation that was all public, and it was out there. And, you know, staff had the opportunity to show it to us. And I did go to the attorney's office. And I can't say I can jump on your side of the podium today.
Mr. Fletcher, if I might respond.
Absolutely.
Do you think for 30 seconds even that my smiling face is unrecognizable in the community? Or do you think maybe if I go out to the grocery store, I probably get at least as many people that recognize me as recognize you? You think? That's you know, and yes, sir, I was.
You've been working at this for many years.
Yeah, well, not as long as I have in this community.
No, I said you have.
Yeah, and anyway, when I brought this matter before this commission, it was because a citizen recognized me in the grocery store and said, Mr. Hetty, look what they're doing to me. Can I take a couple of minutes of your time? And after I looked at it, and it took a while to put the timeline together and to see what really happened, I did bring it before this commission, and you're one of the ones that the first time said you were going to look into it, but you never contacted me.
I did.
You never, no you didn't, you never contacted me.
You're representing somebody at a forum which will have a decision made, and I was very clear to you, this is now a public meeting, but I was very clear to you that the attorney had advised us not to engage in that activity. So I said I would look at it, and I'm here to tell you publicly that I did I don't know if my counterparts did. I cannot speak for them. But I committed to you, and I did, and quite frankly, what you're saying did not have a high validity ratio.
Okay, gentlemen,
And
I
you
believe
said
we are
that-
getting
But I
off
think
topic
that's-
a little bit.
that's enough.
If I could, Mr. Heddy, if I could ask you to wrap it up for today, please.
Yeah, well, let me respond to Mr. Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher, you said that the county attorney told you not to talk to me about this, and I understand you've said that before at a prior meeting. And in fact, the person that I'm here representing, your county attorney, told her that I could not act as her counsel, I could not represent her, and he refused to allow her proper counsel, also a huge violation of her rights. So, you know, I think it's kind of ridiculous. On one hand, you say people come up to you and you talk to them and you do something, but in my case, you refused to talk to me, you refused to meet with me, and you said that you can't meet with me because the county attorney told you that you couldn't. And he told you you couldn't because it was in litigation, right? Is that correct? You're shaking your head, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So this matter is in litigation, and he tells the person being charged that she's not allowed the counsel of her choice. So I'll tell you,
Mr. Heddy, I think we've talked about the council issue enough. We went through a nice.
when did you take over as chairman?
Mr. Heddy, I'm trying to help this board proceed.
You
through a
could
committee.
help this, or you could help the whole issue by doing the right thing.
We are doing the right thing,
No, you're
sir. I
not.
think you've concluded your time.
No, you're not. I've concluded my time. So now the county attorney runs the meetings? Wow. I can tell you that when I was on city council, I can tell you the city attorney didn't run things.
I'd be happy for the chair to overrule me.
Mr. Heddy, if you could
Yes.
wrap it up, please.
Yeah, sure. I'll wrap it up, and I'm sure my, well, I'm not sure what my, the person I represent, I'm not sure what she is going to do, but she's probably going to continue, and which is going to continue to cost the taxpayers more money. And it seems to me that it's a shame that this whole elected board would treat a citizen like this, and maybe, you know, that's one of the reasons why, Mr. Solari, I got in the county commission race, because the abuse of power by elected officials at every level of government is disgusting. And you, sir, are at the core of this one.
That's, Mr. Heddy, that is enough.
Mr. Chairman.
And
We're not doing personal
which
attacks
part is enough? The part that I think is enough is the personal attacks.
Correct, Mr.
You
Heddy.
charged this lady with a violation of the code. How much more personal attack can there be when she didn't do anything wrong? You charge people with turtle violations when clearly they're not guilty of anything.
And that was.
And if that's not a
reheard and
personal
dropped.
attack, Mr. O'Brien, I don't know what is.
And that was reheard and dropped.
Pardon?
The turtle.
No,
issue
in
was
fact, the
reheard
turtle
and dropped.
violation that I'm talking about, they say that there's still a $100 fine due for 2 lights. So no, that particular turtle violation has not been dropped. If you drop it, I'll stop talking about that.
Well, if you heard it, and they still think it's a valid charge, and it is.
It is a valid charge? Did you see the photograph?
Well,
Mr.
I saw
Heddy.
what
Did you see the
claimed was.
photograph?
I saw what you claimed was, but that doesn't mean anything to me.
It's in your files.
Okay,
From you.
The
we've
photograph
digressed
is
to a
in
level
your
below
file.
which we
It's the
ought-
evidence against this homeowner.
Mr. Heddy, if
There's
you would. Mr.
absolutely
Heddy,
no,
Mr.
absolutely no illumination of the beach. Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Solari.
would you wrap it up, please, so we can get on with the
Well,
business?
I think that the only way that this can be wrapped up is have the commissioners do the right thing, and clearly that's not going to happen. And clearly you need somebody up there that's willing to fight for the public, the people that pay your salaries, who you abuse.
Thank you. Next up, we'll go back to Ms. Wanda Scott, who we interrupted before, and I'll just try to make the recommendation, if you could, try to focus on one issue and that we can understand and perhaps react to in some way. Thank you.
Is it good afternoon or good morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. When I was at the my presentation earlier, and I was talking about imminent danger as any condition or practice in any place of employment which are such that a danger exists which could reasonably be expected to cause death or serious physical harm immediately or before the imminence of such danger can be eliminated through the enforcement. What I wanted to recap was what happened in Gifford before, during, and after the storm, how we were greatly impacted. And these are some either lessons learned and some bullets that we dodged. I mean, some real bullets. But thank God, for the most part, what we expected, the outcome, it was minimized by some of the things that were done under Mr. Sparta, is it Sparta Richards' department, with the culverts, with, what was it, David Gonter's department, dredging the canals. Because of some of those proactive, or either I got on your nerves, by us having those things done, we dodged some bullets. But I would like to say thank you for working with me. I know I got on your nerves, but it did pay off. And I had a lot of residents to say, thank God they dredged those canals, because we would have had a lot of flooding. So the timing, your timing has been wonderful. And I still want to continue to build a relationship. Sometimes I feel like it's going nowhere, the efforts that I put forth. But I'm going to keep pressing forward. Now, the Gifford area, some of the things I wanted to highlight, some of the agencies or supportive agencies that made our area, or well, let me just get into it. For proactive planning and executing an organized plan of attack that included people and property that was identified, we give an attaboy to FP&L. They did respond, not immediately, but once they responded, they had the people from out of town that went in, cut down trees, and restored power in a timely manner. The stormwater drainage department, again, they get an attaboy for the dredging of the canals from 41st to 49th, which minimized flooding. We would have had, oh my God. So the county gets an attaboy with that too, because, you know, I've been sending the emails and the letters and you've passed it on. And by that, we had minimum flooding. Okay, the Gifford, and then there was one other department. I had so much information, but I'm not gonna go there. I'm just gonna stick with some critical things, and then I'll send the letter to forward the information, further information. Okay, the first responders who were called in some areas, and I want to highlight 28th Court and 49th Street. We had a lady that was medically dependent, and really she should have went into the shelter, a medical shelter, but she did not. She was oxygen dependent. Right after the storm hit, I think early in the morning, a power line, wooden power line, went down like 4 or 5 steps from her door. the power line was energized. It was hot. She called the 911. They sent the first responders out. They ended up roping off 3 houses, from the house beyond her and then the house to 49th Street. Why was that significant? Because the back side of that, her house is, what is that called? Gifford Groves, which is thousands of children. And, but anyway, the point is she stayed at home. She should have went to the shelter because she's medically dependent upon oxygen, which means she needed power. She stayed home. The people roped off, the first responders roped off the area. The problem that did occur was that when the storm occurred, right after the storm occurred, it was roped off. It stayed roped off until Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday morning, and which also meant that the power stayed on, which was inches from her door. And what the imminent danger was Monday morning, because the kids that are that usually go to Gifford Middle School normally comes through her yard, and that was a feat in itself. When I say we dodged a bullet, I mean we dodged a bullet. Because that power was not cut, or she had power the whole time, but it was not taken care of until Tuesday. The confusion was who was responsible. We did determine it was the city of Vero Beach and not FP&L. And that was one of the major confusion, because people they called the city. They did not get people that had immediate dangers, which meant power down, power loose, power floating. They never got through. So they ended up calling 911. So that's kind of some of the support services we probably need to make a note of, because we could have had a lot of lives, a lot of people, not from the storm, but after the storm. And there was quite a few gaps. So that was one area. The medically dependent people were released from the shelters on Saturday. Those are the people on heart machines, oxygen, whatever. And some of the people were released back into the community without power, some without or food that had spoiled, because they had to go in earlier than everybody else. So there was a big gap in Gifford of services or support services. We could have had quite a few people, fatalities, because of lack of power, or I don't know if they had a service that would track those people going back to ensure they were going back into homes with power and proper food, or even caregivers to assist them. I know some of the, most of the people that went into the shelters had some caregivers. So that was one of the gaps. Another gap, and I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but these are things that, we're still not out of the storm season, but some things that we can keep in mind or plan to either strengthen or reduce the impact. And one of the things I had said, like I had been pinging on everybody about the culverts and the canals, but we also have a large quantity of power line poles, I don't know if that's what you want to call them, that are wooden. Now the ones along the school, Gifford Middle School, those are concrete. The ones on the east side of the railroad track are concrete, but the majority of the wooden poles that have not been replaced, I know it's not a county per se maybe it's not, because I know we have a street lighting district, and then we also have franchise fees and so forth. But anyway, you don't have to answer that. We have a large
You can't-
percentage of
Ms.
poles.
Scott, that one's easy to answer. Most of the poles are owned by the service provider.
Mhm.
So a portion of those poles would be owned by the city of Vero Beach, and a portion of them, I think, you're served by FP&L. The ones closer to you, I believe, would be the city of Vero Beach.
Exactly. And that was the major problem, because we could not reach them. We could not, even law enforcement made calls and could not get through. And it like I said, we dodged a bullet, because we had power lines down and still energized. One in particular was the one off of 45th Street near Gifford Middle and Martin Luther King. That was, oh my God, we dodged a bullet there. And I'm sure you're familiar. But I do, let me finish saying something. What I want to
address that one down power line that was reported on Friday, and that was an FP&L line, and it was corrected on Saturday, and I got confirmation of that, and Bart addressed that immediately, and it was purported that it was fully live. That wasn't necessarily the case, but it was a hazard, and it was addressed on Saturday morning.
Okay, the one I'm talking about is the one
The one in front of Gifford Middle at 45, 30, 28th Court.
No, not that one. The one that directly was in front of 26th Avenue and 25th, and it covered the grid, the packing house, Martin Luther King, Mosley Groceries, Acolina Bank, and a handful of residents, because we didn't get our power restored until Sunday afternoon. And what I wanted to say, what was imminent danger, was while everything was going on, the power was energized, we had people walking along the sidewalk and trying to get to Martin Luther King, which was closed, not knowing that we had a live wire power line. And then there was a problem with who was responsible for the tree or for the power line, and it was a lot of massive confusion. At the same time, one of the things that the residents expected was barricades, flashing light barricades, or some type of rope, notifying the community we have imminent danger. Up until about 6:30 that evening, Saturday, that was the first barrier that was put in place. We had a number of near miss, because the tree actually came over, covered one side of the road, and then a portion of the other side of the road, and then it was also covered some of the sidewalk. We did see a lot of white trucks with yellow tags and police and sheriffs, but no one made a response until about 6:30, which was, no, I take that back. People were doing things, but as far as the public safety concern, we didn't see actually anything tangible, which were barricades, which was about 6:30 Saturday, and I think that was under the leadership of Teddy Floyd. And that went well as far as stopping people from driving in that area, and then they had to detour. But one problem did arise, and that was one of my concerns. We talk about imminent danger again. Right off of 26th Avenue, people were detoured, I guess sort of abruptly. And one of the things that we may want to consider when barricades are established, that they have a full, I guess from 58 notifying the residents up until where people are impacted, and then all of the little side roads. One of the things that we did note on 26th Avenue, it was detoured to 26. When the people got up, started driving on 26, they panicked. I started videotaping, because I said, why are the people running through the stop sign from 43rd and 26th, which is my corner, Mosley Groceries. And I don't know if because they saw a lot of people walking or what, I don't know, they just panicked. So people were jetting across. We captured almost 6 almost head-on collisions in 1 hour. We just like, wow, what is going on? So finally I figured it out that they didn't see a sign that gave them instructions to turn left, to go to the railroad track, to go over the 43rd Street railroad track. So I called and I asked, could we get someone out with just a sign, with a detour, with an arrow, that would eliminate the confusion, because I had an officer to come out, a deputy. He came out, he took the report, and then he came back within 20 minutes. He almost got hit. And then I think he called the county himself, and then they said they didn't have any signs, no more detours or whatever, until Monday. So I said, we have a problem Saturday night because there's no power. So people are not seeing that this is the corner, and they're just dashing through, and the people going east and west and the people going south, it's just almost, it was like, oh my God, this is gonna be, someone's gonna get killed either tonight.
Ms. Scott,
And then,
you've been going on for over 15 minutes now. If you could
Okay,
perhaps
well-
wrap up with one.
well, you understand what I'm saying. So this is one of the things that we, in the Gifford area, when we do put barricades, it was an awesome idea. However, we need to complete it and make sure all of the adjoining roads are clearly marked so that the people will, properly get to their destination in a quicker manner. And then the support of the county, or even having signs somewhere in the area so that we could get to those signs quicker and not Monday. So that's on the county. Now the other thing, okay. I had a lot of stuff, but I'm not gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna follow up in the letter. I had one other area. We also, at one point, with law enforcement, calling dispatch, we had people on the phone for 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and they didn't get anyone. The phone actually hung up. So that was the 911 call. And then the dispatch at the city of Vero Beach, we dodged a bullet, because if someone was having a heart attack or something that they needed immediately, I don't know who would have been liable at that point. But we had those situations after the storm. So I'm just bringing that to your attention, and whatever considerations in the planning, emergency planning, that would help. And maybe this is it for the season. So what I will do, I have more. I'm going to follow up with the letter and I think the ones that were major are there. And then we can deal with the other ones through the letter, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to utility services, approval of bid award for Indian River County bid number 2017011, annual bid to maintain and operate the West Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility Wetland System, memorandum dated September 28th. Mr. Burke.
Good afternoon. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have the agenda item 12G1 today to discuss the approval of bid for award to Indian River County bid number 2017011, the annual bid to maintain and operate the West Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility Wetlands System. Back in August, the county went out to bid. The bids were received on September 9th, 2016 at the bid opening. And we received 3 bids from Wetland Solutions Incorporated, Ecotech Consultants Incorporated, and Florida Environmental Consulting. Before we get into some of the details, I just want to say that we do thank FEC for their services over the past 5 years. They are here today, so I'll probably go into a little bit of the detail. I know that we have Jennifer Hyde from purchasing that's also here for availability, but FEC is going to want to request the board to reconsider what staff has recommended in the agenda item. So on September 19th, there was some clarification from staff to the prospective bidders, Ecotech and WSI, to verify the information that they had submitted, since you can see the discrepancy between the two submittal bids. Wetland Solutions was at $32,500, Ecotech was at $34,000, and Florida Environmental Consulting at $52,660. We received that information. An agenda item was put together, and then on September 30th of this year, certain members of FEC reached out to some of the folks here up on the dais and the county administrator to voice their concern with a prospective item that would be going on to the Board of County Commission meeting scheduled for October 4th, excuse me. We have included in the agenda packet a copy of their letter with some of the information that they're probably going to talk to you about today. And we also have included in there the official bid protest of October 3rd, 2016, which they submitted to the Purchasing Department. Attention, Jennifer Hyde. On October 12th of 2016, the Purchasing Department issued a letter back to Mr. Tim Maslin from Florida Environmental Consulting, listing a lot of information that begins on page 320 of your agenda packet. It's approximately 2 pages going into the reasons why the protest would be denied, and explaining that if they wanted to, they could certainly come to the Board of County Commissioners to voice their opinion, which I think they're here to do today. But I think the take-home messages that need to be examined are the scope of work required that all folks who submitted a bid to supply information regarding 40 acres of exotics treatments. And the bid that was submitted by Florida Environmental Consulting, that was not included in their base bid, but that was included as an add alternate, which then would be on top of their base bid. Secondarily, the lowest provider, Wetland Solutions Incorporated, submitted a bid of $32,500, and they were disqualified because they could not meet the fact that Indian River County and DEP required us to have a consultant on site once a week. Wetland Solutions out of Gainesville is not from in town, and they were proposing to come once every 3 weeks. So even though they had submitted the lowest qualified responsive bid, they were disqualified because they took exception to the bid and the fact that they would only come once every 3 weeks. So that left us with Ecotech Consultant, the only consultant of the 3 that did not take exception to the bid or the scope of work that was requested. Also, you will notice that in moving forward, staff did not want to do a 3-year term. It was a 1-year term with 2 additional 1-year terms subject to vendor acceptance, satisfactory performance, and staff determination that a renewal would be in the best interest of the county. The existing annual contract that's in place today was a 3-year term with 2 1-year extensions, to which FEC is now in their final second extension. So I just wanted to go over some of the general information without going into a lot of detail, but certainly staff is available if there are specific questions that may come up. The purchasing department is available with any questions that they may have, and I would suggest that you ask me to step aside and hear from FEC as far as their perspective. But I did want to mention that the information that we had put forth on the scope of work, especially section 4 of the scope, requested that they provide vegetative removal, exotic removal treatments. That was not included in FEC's base bid, but was added as an add alternate, which brought it up to the $52,660. So if there's any questions that I can certainly answer before the board would hear from FEC, I'm certainly available to do so.
So in practicality, what the bid was supposed to include, as I'm hearing from you anyhow, is that we have 40 acres of exotics that we want inside the package as far as for removal of some kind of, for herbiciding or mechanically, whatever.
In the base bid, as well as an aerial photography on an annual basis, but the aerial photography and the exotics was included as an add alternate on top of the base bid, which we were looking for in our base bid. So Ecotech and Wetland Treatment Solutions included that in their base bid, but FEC included that as an add alternate on top of their base bid.
And we said we wanted that in the bid.
Yes, sir. That was in the that was in the bid scope.
In the scope of services. Okay.
Any other questions of Mr. Burke? Now, your recommendation is we hear from FEC?
Sure.
Be happy to have somebody from FEC come on up and. Name and address for the record, please.
Pardon me?
Name and address for the record,
thank you.
please.
Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing me. Again, this is Tim Maslin, Florida Environmental Consulting. As Vinny was detailing, we'd like to take this moment to detail our protest and appeal to the recommended award for the wetland treatment system. Obviously, you guys have read my protest letter, and as such, this recommendation, in our humble opinion, represents a backtracking of what we've been trying to accomplish out there. To carry on what Vinny was saying, our bid did include extra line items for aerial photography because in the bid specifically, it did not require aerial photography. Did not require. Second, our bid does have an additional line item for exotics treatment. Our bid does have exotics treatment as an additional line item, but it is also included in the minimum amount of work that's due out there on a regular basis. So we are requesting that we've been doing it for 5 years anyway. Actually, the restoration effort has been more about 3 years. So there is an amount of exotics treatment that is required just to operate the system appropriately. And then, based on our experience, we know that we need more to catch up to what is out there. So in addition, to move forward with that, specifically our protest, in addition to what I just said, is about a couple of administrative items and a couple of technical items, as detailed in the packages. And our bid protest. Basically, there's some conflict of interest that we believe is out there, and other bid infractions that some of the things weren't filled out correctly, some of them weren't at all, which we feel created a unfair advantage to the potential winning bidder in this case. So, however, to keep it all short, we have evidence now that the recommended bidder illegally contacted the utility department after the bids were submitted, and ironically, prior to a request for additional information from the purchasing department. So basically, during the bid process, conversations were had directly with utility staff regarding the bid contract costs, as well as unwritten potential inclusions and exclusions to that bid. We believe this newly discovered information may constitute disqualification of the bidder by disregarding county bidding regulations, potentially or specifically to get an unfair advantage over the other bidders during the cone of silence. Based on that email evidence, the subject bidder initially said the bid included all items addressed in the bid package. Then later on in RFI, included items that were not required in the bid package, i.e. the aerial photographs. They are not required in the bid package. And that seemed to be used to catapult their base bid over mine. Because my 52.6 is a number that I think should represent what it would take to operate that system. My 32.9 is my base bid of us doing the bare minimum thing that everybody's been doing out there for the last 20 years. So based on this, we don't know the specifics of the conversation that were had between the utility department and Ecotech, and we don't think that there was any collusion or any ill intent. However, we do believe, as innocent as the conversation may have been, it appears to have resulted in an unfair advantage to the subject bidder by inspiring the inclusion of those certain items, again, that had never been previously provided by that bidder when he managed this contract. Were not required in the bid, but in fact were being provided by Florida Environmental Consulting separately. And in this case, the information was used by that bidder after the fact to falsely inflate our base price above his. Additionally, the recommended bidder's RFI that I was just describing was not submitted by the deadline submitted by the county. That means this bidder failed again to appropriately and responsibly respond to the county as requested. As Dylan had mentioned to me previously, there doesn't seem to be any legal ramifications for that. However, there doesn't seem to be any appropriate professional excuse or professional requirement that this wasn't adhered to nor enforced by the county. And again, ergo, that may result in an unfair advantage to the recommended bidder in this case. For the record, other bidders were successful in submitting their RFI days before they were due. That being said, fundamentally, if that inappropriate conversation had not taken place and that RFI information remained omitted from their submitted bid, that bidder would not have had an unfair advantage in this case. That aerial photography would not have been included in their base bid, and in fact, my price would have been lower than theirs in that case. Finally, we were invited to bid on this contract 5 years ago due to what we perceived as a staff dissatisfaction with the then current contractor's performance, among other things, by allowing the system to be 100% infested with cattails and other exotics, rather than the permitted and required bulrush species and other appropriate wetland species that should have been out there. In turn, the failed management by that contractor is directly responsible, in our opinion, for the county's expenditure having to fix it, and for the record, there's still plenty more to fix out there. In this case, I don't believe the county should hire again and fund a contract later for activities his protocols cause a need for. I remember giving Bob and Vinny a tour out there when I first started, and I thought we all concurred that the system had been let go and needed restoration. You even put a sign out there for me saying wetland restoration in progress, and for that I thank you. And I'm hoping that that's still the goal. As such, we bid for this contract as a responsible bidder, laying it all on the table for review, and are here hoping you guys see the difference. Conversely, that previous company is now perceived, incorrectly in our opinion, by staff as the low bidder, again, and this time at a price even lower now than before, when he was failing to provide the appropriate management. So, as Vinny said, I believe he's incorrect on this. We are offering the 40 acres of wetland treatment that is required in the bid. We are also suggesting an additional amount that is our secondary bid. That's how we have our base bid completely drawn out, everything on available for everyone to see, that our base bid is $32,900. So in summary, we believe first that this bid process was compromised, and that the resulting bid may need to be disqualified. Moreover, there could be some conflict of interest with that bidder, as well as certain family members of his that are employees of the county. So we believe the current recommendation of that bid does not represent the actual low bidder, nor the mission of this commission, and we're asking, humbly, for it to be declined. Those issues together, what we believe substantiates our protest, and as such, we humbly suggest an alternate recommendation. Win, lose, or draw, we just want you, the commissioners, to be aware of these circumstances and be able to make your own informed decisions on the matter as it exists as a whole. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Again, Tim Maslin, Florida Environmental.
Mr. Maslin, could you tell us more about that conflict of interest?
Yes. The environmental consultant being recommended is an environmental consultant. His wife is an employee of the county's environmental department. In addition, the bidder is on the board of directors for the county's environmental committee, and with those relationships, we believe that this is inappropriate, and it may represent a possible direct funneling of county funds to and from those parties.
Thank you.
In the proposal, the bid proposal, is there a disclaimer about any family members within the organization or any operation to have to do with the proposed contract?
There is a disclaimer, yes, and it was filled out correctly. I just don't think it was evaluated to the extent that maybe it was necessary.
Any other questions of Mr. Maslin?
No. Yeah, just real quick. So, why wouldn't you have, instead of that add-on or whatever for the additional 40 acres or whatever, why wouldn't you have suggested a change order later on versus, and maybe that's the way it's done. I mean, I don't know.
Well, you're exactly correct. That's how we had done it in the past. For us to gain this contract 5 years ago, we basically had to, beat the low bidder in this process then. What our exceptions were 5 years ago were, we will not carry out this wetland contract the way it is required to be carried out. We are going to carry it out the same way the previous contractor had been doing it. So we will propose this, that, and the other, but on the things that need to be provided that haven't been providing, we will need to get change order items. So quarterly, we've been getting change order items for cattail maintenance. We had a kiosk built out there. We had the public boardwalk restored. There's a myriad of things out there that we've done and suggested to the county to do on their own dime as well. So that's why the difference is here. Quarterly, we kept having to fight with the utility department and the county to say, okay, well, it's time to do another treatment. It's time to keep our restoration program going. And then that would have to go through the proper channels to be approved, and then a pay order would be given.
Okay, so you're
Which case,
saying-
So we wanted it all to be included at once,
Right.
which is why it's 52 on the front page, but why the base bid is 32.9.
And you're saying even at the 32.9, you don't believe that either one of those can do what needs to be done, not what the spec, what the bid says, just that you don't think that
Correct.
that they can.
Correct. Yeah. With the lowest bidder only being able to come out there once every 3 weeks. I mean, I'm out there every day. I'm out there at least twice a week when it's sample time, and I'm out there almost every day during the week when there's a storm. I mean, the water trickles through that, and if you have a breach, the water just sheets across the top, and then what would be worse is we have a nitrogen and phosphorus discharge infraction from the state, which we don't want. So I'm definitely out there once a week. I'm probably more likely out there an additional once a quarter, and then additional once a month for sampling, plus every time it rains, I'm out there another time or two at least. And we've been working on the cattail treatments for about 3 years now since we've started that program. And effectively, once you get to the end of that quarter, you do a certain amount of work until we get the seed source knocked down, and we get native vegetation coming back in that can crowd out the cattails and the other nuisance vegetation. We need to do more than the minimum amount to get an appropriate restoration management going. Which is why, again, that's a secondary item rather than just the bare minimum management and operation just to barely meet DEP criteria.
So you personally go out on a continual basis?
Correct.
All right. As an aside, there's a lot of initials next to your name. Can you explain what they are?
Certified environmental consultant, certified environmental specialist, and certified environmental inspector. I have a degree from University of Florida in environmental consulting, and natural resource management is my minor.
And you're personally going out?
I'm personally going out, correct.
Oh, thank you.
I meet with Tony Etter, the wastewater plant manager out there every Friday. And almost every Friday, if not once a month or more, I meet with Rich Meckes also out there, and I discuss what we've been doing and what I suggest we do from here forward.
To the chair, if I may ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, first I have a note. Jennifer Hyde approached the podium to discuss the conflict of
Yes.
interest issue, if you wish her to address the issue. But Mr. Maslin, I just want to ask you, go back to your presentation. You discussed some sort of inappropriate communications between the lowest bidder.
Correct.
Or not the lowest bidder, but the lowest responsible bidder. Is that the correspondence with requesting clarification, or is that a separate,
That's a separate
communication? Okay.
That's separate.
What is the nature of that? This is the first I'm hearing of that. That was not raised within in your letters or your protest or
Correct.
your emails.
What we found for reading these things, and when I was trying to articulate to you folks the nature of my initial protests from an administrative stance, I laid all those items down to you at that time. What we found since then, by reading all these things a little more closely, one of these emails directly that was replying to Ms. Hyde was that the recommended bidder said specifically, "We spoke to such and such of the utility department last week regarding bid contract costs and confirmed bid included all items discussed in the bid package." So this email was a week or a couple days before the RFI went out. So that means the recommended bidder had contacted the utility department to talk about what's included and what isn't included before an RFI came out.
The RFIs are RFP? Or
Request for additional information.
Information. Okay.
So basically what happened at that point was, after that conversation, again, however innocent or whatnot that was, what they appeared to have done was used the inclusion of an aerial photograph to make his bid at $34,000 be lower than my base bid by adding the aerial to my base bid. That was a separate item. So therefore, my base bid went above their submitted price.
Well, okay.
So why would you include an aerial photograph if it's not included? And then of course, if you're contacting the county to say, hey, should we include all this stuff? Well, of course, then you win. Yeah, sorry. My apologies.
No, that's okay. But, all right, so when is the cone of silence supposed to, I mean, if that was before the RFI.
Well, why don't we wait and ask Jennifer Hyde that question.
That's perfectly
Rather
fine.
than
I
Mr.
just-
Maslin. But let's finish up with Mr. Maslin, and then we'll bring up Ms. Hyde.
Well, okay. It's just that I just want to know more about what that email and the time
And
frame.
let's ask Ms. Hyde if she'll come up and answer the cone of
Yes,
cone of
the
silence
attention has
question.
been directed.
Good morning, Jennifer Hyde, County Purchasing Manager. The cone of silence is typically in place once the RFP is released and up until the staff presents their recommendation award to the board. So typically, and I can find the reference for you, but it's the whole period of the
All right, so,
procurement process.
but that email was before the RFI or request for proposal, request for information?
The
They
email
came-
was
Request for
specifically
clarification.
during the bidding process and review process.
Yeah, it was after the bids were received
Okay.
according, yeah, the email we received said that he did speak with Terry.
Well, if it was after the bids were received,
Yes, but before we were asked to send a request for information to the two low bidders for the clarification questions that the department had.
thank you.
Wait, say that one more time? So it was after the bid was received and
Still
then.
in the cone of silence
It is?
period. Yes,
It's supposed to-
if I'm understanding that right, it's still under the cone of silence time frame.
Because the process is evidently still going on. If she sent
Right.
out a request for information, it seems like there's still things happening.
And I'll just read it. I'm holding this. This is a email from Ecotech to Diane in our purchasing division. Please see attached response. We spoke to Terry Southard last week regarding the bid contract cost and confirmed our bid included all items discussed in the bid package. Fortunately, your email was not recognized by our computer and was placed in a spam folder that we did not see until a few minutes ago. Our only comment here is that we did provide a complete bid as per the instructions, and given that we are the most knowledgeable company, paren, having worked on this project since 1994, close paren, regarding the permitting, operation, and maintenance of the subject, well, and we were somewhat surprised that the question would have arose, period, regards Chip Swindell. So I guess this is the issue where you had requested information back to your office by September 19th, 2016 by 5 p.m., and you got it at 6:08 that day.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify what this allegation was about.
And the cone of silence states potential bidders and respondents shall not communicate in any way with the Board of County Commissioners, county administrator, or any county staff other than purchasing personnel from the time bid advertisement through and including bid award.
So that's purchasing.
Yes.
No, but it refers to discussion with county staff.
Well, except for the purchasing department, she said.
Yeah, but
it includes.
He has to ask her to ask them.
The discussion was with utility staff, not purchasing staff.
Not that what that email says, does it?
No, what the code of silence requires is that the only communication be between bidders and
Right.
purchasing. Don't go through other departments or the commissioners or Jason Brown.
So in this case, he was talking to staff about the bids and what the bids were, how they fell, allegedly, before the choices were made.
Is that clear, Counselor? That there was a discussion during, or it was prior to the?
It appears from
cone
what
of
I can read
silence
from this,
period?
and Vincent is here as well from Utilities Department, is it appears that there was a question about clarification of the bid. I don't know if that somehow went from Jennifer to Terry, and then Terry asked, or if, I don't know kind of the history of how that circulated. I know the purchasing department division was looking for clarification on the bids, and I guess this was the response they got.
However,
Based on a
the
request from
specific bid said no exceptions.
Yeah.
So later, there is an
It's
exception.
my understanding that they clarified there were no exceptions, but I
And
defer to
then,
Jennifer on that.
right, and then later, there was an RFI that said, did you include this, did you include that? And the answer was, well, yes, yes, and yes.
Request for clarification, not RFI.
Right.
That's more of a formal, separate.
So it wasn't included during the bid. Conversations were had, then an RFI came out that included some additional items that he ended up including, that basically, like I was saying, trumped my 32.9 base price with the aerial being added to it to go over his 34,000 price.
that's not what I understood Ms. Hyde to have just said. What I understood her to have said, and I could be wrong, it's starting to get, I haven't had lunch yet, and I'm starting to fade.
Likewise.
But I understood her to say that she sent out a request for clarifications to make sure that the original bid included certain items in the bid. She just wanted to make sure that
Right.
A, B, C, and D were there. And the response she got was, yes, A, B, C, and D were there.
Even though he didn't include it in his bid.
No, but, no, from what I understood, it was included in his bid, that the clarification she got was that A, B, C, and D were initially included in his original bid. That's just my understanding of what she said. I'll ask Ms. Hyde to let me know if.
That was our interpretation as well.
Okay. And it appears different from my side, obviously. If you use an item that is not required in the bid to ask questions of whether or not a no exceptions bid included something in the bid when it wasn't required in the bid, after conversations were had outside the cone of silence, that leads me to believe that, again, no matter how innocent it may have been, something in the conversation, in the mannerisms or whatnot, inspired him to say, yes, I'm including these items even though they're not required.
Well, I need to say the request for clarifications, as I understand, was made because of complaints by others that something wasn't included in the base bid. So the request for clarification was sent out, and it was confirmed by the bidder that we've recommended the award to. And so now we have a bidder who's trying to say that it wasn't included when the recommended bidder says it is included. And I think the base bid, it seems to me like we're trying to change the price on what our base bid was when there seems to be a
he seems to be including that item as an after the fact thought.
Do we have a copy of the bid here right now?
Yes, a blank bid, or would you like to see one of the submittals? I can show you all three.
Well, what I'm hearing from Mr. Maslin is, like, the aerial photography was listed in the bid as a
Requirement.
add-on. No, not a requirement, as an add-on.
Correct.
So you would submit your base bid for the things that are required.
Oh, that one's blank.
And then what I'm hearing Mr. Maslin said, the add-on things he listed separately,
Correct.
which to me makes sense. If it's not required,
Don't list it in your base.
you don't list it in your base, you list it as add-ons. And what
Exactly.
I'm hearing is, with the recommended bid, on a follow-up for clarification, he goes, oh no, that added-on item, I've already included that in my base bid. And Mr. Maslin is saying, well, that doesn't make business sense. I mean, if it's not required, why do you throw things in your base bid?
And it was never supplied by that vendor for the
And that's
15
just what
years
I'm
that he
trying
had
to
the
see
contract.
One at a time, please. I'm trying to.
If the bid shows that it is an added-on item or not.
The bid itself, the bid form does not say so in our scope of work under vegetative monitoring. They asked for quantitative analyses derived from aerial photographs or casual observations. So it was discussed, it was not required, it was aerial photographs or casual observations. Looking at the bid form, annual fee was just a lump sum, and then we had some other things that they were considering as add alternates. The only place that I saw anyone noted aerial photography specifically was in the separate form, the affidavit of compliance, where FEC listed all of the other services that they were proposing to provide and any additional costs therefore associated with.
Okay, again, and you lost me a little bit
Sorry.
there. Was aerial photography included in the base or not?
If they were intending to use that instead of casual observations to provide that type of monitoring, then yes, it would have been.
So they had a choice of monitoring,
Correct.
casual
And we didn't ask them to
monitoring or-
specify.
Okay.
I think one of the key forms that Jennifer had showed me when I was having a conversation with Jennifer about this was the bid form, the first page. And on that first page, it says, in accordance with all terms, conditions, specifications, and requirements, the bidder offers the following. Number one, annual fee. And the number at the other side was $52,660. This is the original first page submitted by Florida Environmental Consulting, $52,660. And that the purchasing division compared all of the three, bids they got in. Jennifer, Ms. Hyde, what was the number for annual fee for the other bidders?
34,000 was for Ecotech, and then the other was 32,500.
So those were just the first page. This is the thing you see as the number that you're comparing against all other bidders. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what we read publicly in a public bid opening, is what your bid is.
And I'd be happy to circulate a copy of what this looks like to the board if you guys want to see it.
And if I may, go ahead.
Hang on, you know, it kind of seems to me there might have been some confusion on this whole bid about what, you know, it might have been more specific as to what's included and what's not. In my mind, I'm just hearing, because I'm still a little confused about the photography thing, to be honest. But it does sound like Mr. Maslin, you know, if you just put down 52,660, even though maybe your intent was, you know, was broken down to the base add-ons, if that line item, you know, if that's the number in the bid package says, what is your base bid, then it might have been a little error on your part, just putting the wrong number in there. Is it different what she has?
Well, it wasn't up to the purchasing department to read and evaluate the exceptions page. So line 1 of my exceptions page says, please note that in addition to the base annual fee of $32,900, the following are suggested by me.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, again, that's, I don't believe that that's Jennifer's job to evaluate the technical aspects of exceptions page.
Is that what prompted the questions back then of the other bidders of what's included in their package as far as the aerial, et cetera?
Yes, we had wanted to confirm two things. One, from WSI, that indeed they wanted to do it every 3 weeks. We wanted to make sure we adhered to what was in the scope, which is once a week, and they said they would do it every 3 weeks. There was also a price of $160,000 for one of the ad alternate denitrification studies, I believe it was, that was far and above anything that we had experienced. $160,000, a lot of money, but that was based on sampling to be required at 15 cells per station, 6 station, 12 hours per location, 1,100 samples. So that's why their cost was quite high. So they confirmed that the denitrification study was $160,000 and that the site visits would be once every 3 weeks. The clarification that we asked for from Ecotech was to determine if aerial photography was included as one of the options that Jennifer had mentioned, the vegetative monitoring, and that a treatment of minimum of 40 acres of the wetlands was included in the base bid as per specification section 5, item number 2, where it says the contractor will, on an annual basis, treat a minimum of 40 acres of the wetland systems to control nuisance and invasive species. What we, staff, did not receive was additional information that FEC provided to the commission office in the cone of silence on September 30th, not to staff, but to the commission office, that included a breakdown of what supposedly was in their base bid that they did not include at the time of submittal to the purchasing department, but they did include it as something to bring to the county commissioner's attentions, which then clearly delineated treating nuisance vegetation at all structures and from berms via an ATV plus or minus 40 acres, but then listing as an ad alternate additional vegetative treatment of $14,640 above and beyond the base bid, which is what staff was concerned about should have been included in the base bid. So I think that's where there's been some confusion as far as what Mr. Maslin was saying that he just inferred was in his base bid that was not clearly identified in the initial bid submittal, but then was added as additional treatment that he clarifies in the letter to the commissioners.
Chairman. Mr. Zort.
Thank you. When it says treat a minimum of 40 acres, do we prescribe what material or chemical they're going to treat with? Because if company A could use one, you know, a $5 a gallon diluted treatment, and the other guy's using what needs to be done to properly treat the facility. So without speccing how they're going to maintain that, to me that leaves a variable of unknowns that are in there. You obviously know what it's done because you've been working on it, so you would potentially put in what you know what works for that type of
Correct. We had to get our
facility.
treatment plan approved by the DEP.
Okay.
And then so everybody would have that same treatment plan?
Everybody would have to get written approval from the state.
With their new plan.
Mm-hmm.
The new guy may have a plan for treatment that's less costly than the plan that's been working, but may
Or
still,
even if he
may or
has
may
to
not
use a
be.
different name brand chemical, he would still have to get it approved.
And in the chemical world, that price can vary quite a bit.
Mental telepathy.
Yeah, and they have to go through a licensure process to be able to apply the herbicides as well.
At the end of the day, this is a bid. It's not an RFP. We're supposed to award it to the lowest, most responsive and responsible bidder. Someone saying, no, you have to have aerials, that's not up to them. I appreciate their expertise in this, but the utility, it puts out, just like every other project we do, that we put something out to bid, we put out a scope of work. That's what the scope of work is. Maybe we need to do some additional things. Maybe there, you know, I know kiosks were built in the last time you do a change order. I would think that would be appropriate because we're not going to rebuild a kiosk every year. So we have requested a scope of services. We have the lowest, most responsible bidder. You know, there was an allegation that the cone of silence was violated. Turns out it was violated by both parties, which is inappropriate, and we're going to take actions to correct that. But I think both parties may have violated that, so I don't think it's a disqualifier for the one and not the other.
Jennifer, you're...
Oh, hold on, sir. Let's just finish up, if we could, with Jennifer and Mr. Mazin, so that they can sit down.
Jennifer, you're then are solid with your recommendation for the second lowest bidder, Ecotech, at $34,000?
Yes.
Okay. And Vinnie, you're satisfied with the scope of services?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think there's a lot of confusion on this bid. I understand Mr. Mazin's point, and maybe as a solution, just let me throw out the recommendation is to award the bid for a year and then authorize the purchase manager to renew for 2 one-year extensions. I would say, why don't we just award the bid for 1 year and then rebid it a year from now, and hopefully have more clarification in the bid process.
And quite frankly, I wouldn't mind seeing if there was, after that year period, if there was a little more detail on the restoration of the wetland system at a little faster pace.
I need to ask this question. As far as some economies of scale or something, would that change the first bid? I mean, knowing that it was a 1 year.
Well, that's why it wouldn't be part of, well, it was 1 year plus 2 one-year extensions. So
they bid it knowing it could be 1 year.
Yeah, so all we're now saying is, well, it's going to be 1 year.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that they didn't.
Yeah, it's not like we went from 3 years with 2 extensions to 1 year, but yeah, we didn't change the base.
But what I probably threw in order to wait till next year, but so.
Yeah.
My only question on that recommendation might be to Vinnie is, does 1 year give you enough time to redo the documents and check to see what's going on out there versus, you know, I don't know, if they needed a 1 year plus a 1 year kind of thing, but that's a
Yeah, I mean,
policy
ultimately
question.
with these types of systems, which Tim can probably confirm, is you have a biological system that sometimes takes a while to see the effects of what's been done, say, in this month. So hopefully 1 year is enough time. Usually it's a 2 to 3 year process because these things are changing depending on atmospheric deposition. But certainly I think 1 year would be enough time for us to at least get a baseline for where we are today, where we could be, and then maybe clean up some of the stuff that has obviously caused some concern today.
I think following up with what Commissioner O'Brien said, we can move forward with the 1 year, but then give, hopefully, next year, a better, more level playing field for everybody making the next bid. If there were any, and I'm not saying there are, but if there were any irregularities in this bid, we can ask the staff to review it and make sure that the process is a little tighter and make sure that every bidder understands what the playing field is right off the bat. So, Commissioner Zork.
And you've done a good job at explaining, but I can see in the process, it's gotten confusion. There's a question on the cone of silence window and the communication that seems to be, okay, part of me says, you know, when does the current contract expire? First question, not next week, I hope.
It's the end of this month.
Yeah. End of this month.
2 weeks.
Yeah, not next week. Week after that.
And I know it's because this protest has been going on is why we've creeped closer to that date. So that's not anybody's particular fault. That's just the process working its way through. Is rather see a revisit. Does the current contract allow for a interim extension if we were to rebid it again? And second, I actually have a number of questions too. To write the plan, the treatment plan to be acceptable to DEP, that may, when somebody's looking at incurring that cost, you may go, well, it's a 3-year contract, I get a little bit of it back over 3 years. Telling somebody they only get it for 1 year, it's kind of front-loaded the expenses and they don't get to depreciate that cost of developing that plan over the life of the plan, so they may or may not like that. So I would more lean to, if there's a way to extend currently for a quarter and clean things up and rebid it. And the more important question I have, and one of the options you mentioned that under, I think it was either wetland or ecotech, that the $160,000 option for, not option, but
monitoring.
The monitoring, are we missing the boat on what we're contracting for? If really an option to the contract is 3 times the value of the contract, shouldn't we be including some more of these pieces to lock in? Because if there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of back-end work, somebody will come in and write a goose egg and say, well, I'll do the initial for 0 because all the money's in the back end. So I'd rather tie up the front end that we need to have, and if we know there's some particular items coming down the pike in the next year or two that are going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, I want to see those included in there, not as an option from the contractor that has it, because we're focusing on the small number, and the big number is where the real dollars are being spent, which is my concern.
And Commissioner Zork, you know, I would be good going out, you know, throw everything out and go to rebid the whole thing, but I think, you know, I'm hearing from our purchasing manager, we have a valid bid from the second lowest bidder.
Right.
And I think if we, and the county administrator is supportive of it, and I think if we throw it out, then we face a challenge by that bidder that, hey, your purchasing manager said, no, we've got a valid bid, why didn't you go with the bid? And so my solution is, let's just do it for 1 year, and then get everything straightened out. We can incorporate some of the things you just talked about, but that way the second lowest, most responsive bidder doesn't have a challenge. We awarded the bid, we're just gonna do it for 1 year.
Vinny, is in the next coming 12 months under the contract, is there any big ticket items that will be awarded to the winning bidder of this that may be of larger scale in terms of dollars?
We don't anticipate having a large change order. It would just be for the base services that we've had out for bid.
Okay, so that's in the current, so the 12-month wouldn't.
But at one time, and that's why we had these ad alternates, was the soil sampling, the detritus sampling, and the denitrification study that should be done, that have not been done, that we are looking to do in the upcoming years. So at some point, either we include that for the next time we do this, or we include that as a separate process that somebody can come in that maybe doesn't have the annual maintenance contract,
right,
that could provide those services to whomever has the expertise and the wherewithal to do so.
Okay. And I like I say, I appreciate your comments on it, but when there's enough question, I'd rather yield on the side of a do-over and clean up everything, no cone of silence question. I mean, you could go through all that and still have new questions that would come up. So I get that. So it's not a imperfect or a perfect system, that things will still or could happen. But and what I'd like to say both to the county administrator and purchasing, that after seeing another entity go through a bid challenge question, not with our county, but with another area, that for somebody to come and challenge, you had to post 10% of the contract amount to be able to challenge the bid. And I'm glad we have a no fee policy to flush these out in the public, which is where they need to be done, and that there's not a cost to the applicant that's raising valid questions. Whether they're valid or they think that they're valid, to me, they need to be heard. So I'm glad we have a process there's no barriers to entry to make a challenge. So that, I think we have a good process of what we're going through here.
Be careful what you wish for. You weren't here during beach sand.
Okay.
Well,
Are there any more questions for either Ms. Hyde or Mr. Maslin? If not, I'll thank you both for coming up.
Thank you.
No, I didn't
No,
hear
it
a motion.
wasn't a motion, actually.
I heard a lot of discussion. I didn't hear a motion, but I'll see if anybody would care to start a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve staff recommendation for the second lowest bidder, which is Ecotech Consultants, for $34,000, but only for a 1-year contract with no renewals.
I'll second that.
Under discussion?
Sir?
I think we need to ask when the firm that's being awarded will they do it for the 1 year for that price?
I think was already the requirement.
That was
I
a
mean-
requirement.
Oh, it
Yes.
was, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it was a 1-year contract with the option.
With the option, I didn't, okay.
As I understand it, anyhow.
Yeah, subject to staff determination if a renewal would be appropriate, so.
And also, none of the submitting companies missed the submittal deadline, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just the one, there was one reference to the one email that was at 6:01 PM on the day of, but that was not for the initial submittal. Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Commissioner Zorc dissenting.
And Mr. Chairman, we will make sure that we make sure there's not confusion next year when this comes back, and we'll be sure to clarify for all parties involved the cone of silence.
And also,
So that's,
not just the cone of silence, but also if truly the work's not enough to be able to keep us, what somebody feels like is not in compliance, as far as the removing the additional vegetative, or doing whatever they gotta do to get rid of the cattails.
we'll make sure that the scope is clear and all of those additional services like Commissioner Zorc was mentioning, and like Vinnie said, we may even decide to bifurcate that and have different providers if appropriate.
I mean, for that one, especially when you talk about the testing, it's over $100,000. To me, that's not maintenance in the same way, so I think going forward, that would be,
And they could submit a bid, but it also could include outside people too. They wouldn't be, I think, precluded from providing
a bid or a bid another time, but again, I
But
agree
not-
with you. I mean, if it's a $30,000 bid, but you've got 100,000 plus testing,
Right.
it doesn't seem the best way to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to also thank Mr. Maslin for the work he's done out there. I think it's in much better condition than when he started. This isn't any personal reflection on the work you've done, Tim. I think you have done a good job, but just kind of how the whole bid process. But this is the only solution I could think of to move it forward, and hopefully we'll look forward to your bid next year. Okay,
Thank you, everyone, very much. I believe there's one more item on the agenda, which is Commissioner O'Brien's matter that was added on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned earlier, when we had the moment of silence, we've been rocked by a tragedy in our emergency services district, and I'd like to just bring up two points. One is, a lot of times, like if a student at a school gets killed in an auto accident, they bring in counselors on site in case any of the students, need counseling right there. I know we have our employee assistant program, which is kind of a phone call thing, but just want the board to consider, should we try to arrange to have a couple counselors come in that might be able to visit the stations, or at least someone that can visit the shift that David was on, and just to be there in person so they don't have to do a phone call. So Chief, that's my first question is, can we bring somebody in, or have we already done that?
We've already made those arrangements.
Okay.
On the hours after the incident, we had counselors come in to visit with the responding crew
Okay.
on Sunday morning. And when I get back to my office, phone calls were made to our EAP provider, and the confirmation is probably coming back this morning. It's my effort to try to have an opportunity at the EOC where we'll have licensed professional counselors that will come in on both Thursday and Friday for any and all employees to come in, and there will be a general discussion, and then there will be an opportunity for have some private discussions for anybody who wants to meet with a counselor privately. But I share your concern. This is a terrible, sad tragedy, and I am concerned about my organization.
And good, and thank you, Chief, that's very good. Second thing I wanted to bring up, I know that we all had a meeting or talk with Dustin Hawkins a few months back about the critical incident stress management, and I don't know if that's the answer now or not, but I think we're at a point now where we really need to have some discussions on the mental aspect of the firefighters. There's an article I was reading that referenced a 2015 FSU study that 46.8% of firefighters have thought of suicide. 19.2% had suicide plans, and 15.5% had made suicide attempts. Those are scary numbers, gentlemen. Also that those that are suffering from the post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, were 6 times more likely to attempt suicide. My brother-in-law is a firefighter in Fort Lauderdale, and they have had a suicide, and then also Broward County Fire Department has had a suicide this year. So I think this is an issue we need to address. And what I would like to propose is that we get with the chief, we get with the union guys, administration, and I'd even be glad to mediate or moderate this. But we need to sit down with these guys and have a talk about what we can do to prevent this outside of collective bargaining, outside of the attorneys. And I think this is an issue where we just need to sit down and talk about these guys and gals, their health and their mental health, and what we can do to move it forward to a solution. And so I just put that out there. If you all think we need to arrange this and get it moving, my thought is I don't want to wait months and months. You know, let's get these folks together. We'll sit down and have some discussions about what we think we can do to address this issue, because I think it's a critical health concern.
Commissioner, I'm with you 100%. I actually discussed this with Jason Brown on Monday morning.
Okay.
I still don't understand. Some things that happen you don't really quite understand. When Mr. Hawkins brought this before us individually, I thought we'd probably be moving forward with it, and I don't understand why we hadn't at this point. So, I mean, I'd hope that we can get something.
And I don't know if the CISM model is the answer or not. I think somewhere out there in the country, there is a fire department that has a very good program. I think we need to find out what that is. But I just want to sit down with the guys and gals and start talking about it and come to a solution.
I understand, but I'd also like to have something in place by the beginning of the year. So, you know, but at least move at a fast pace. I don't understand how come we haven't had I had thought that we were on the path to have a public conversation about this before the board before now. And it just seems like it was something that was either lost or put behind a door or something like that. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. I'd like it to go forward and go forward as fast as possible.
Okay.
My understanding is we already pay for it with our mental health program or aspects of it already. So, you know, I'd have to be, at this point, I'd probably have to be convinced not to go forward with it.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, also.
But I was just going to ask if well, I think we have a consensus on this as it wasn't a public item. I don't know if we need to have a vote on it, but if you want.
No, if the board would like, I'll take the lead and run with this and get with everybody and get the meeting. And Dylan, I know you're going to get all antsy because of collective bargaining stuff, but I'll ask the union guys to state or sign whatever we need to do to say this won't be a wrongful negotiation crap or whatever it is. But we need to sit down and start talking to these guys about this issue.
I actually wasn't getting antsy. I was just, what I heard from the board was something within the context of the law that we can get done, we want to be working on.
And Chief, you okay? You good?
Okay. So I think we've got the consensus, and I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
It's a forge forward for Dustin to begin the process.
Pardon?
Do I understand that? Is just to forge forward for Justin to.
Not
necessarily
Dustin will be
Dustin,
part
but-
of the discussion, but, because again, I don't know if that model is the answer or not. I think, I just want to start talking about the whole issue in general, and then where we think we can go and what we can do and what else is out there, and get it moving as compared to behind the door.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think, you know, obviously this is a terrible tragedy for the fire rescue department, for the whole county, for us personally. And at a time like this, I think it's appropriate to evaluate what we're doing and what support we're providing. So I think it's a very good idea. I think we need to take a comprehensive look, but I promise to do that quickly. Obviously there's an urgency to do something sooner rather than later. So we would be glad to work on that.
Thank you very much.
I just have a little bit of concern. I do have the opportunity to speak to individuals. I think I've been in a similar position countless times, and I have spoken to individuals, and including David, and I don't want anything to interfere with that. That's been a casual approach. It's been something that was basically peer-to-peer, friend-to-friend, and if we're doing something at this level, I just wanted to let council know that will continue. You understand? You understanding? I mean, I have contact and
This is
communication.
you talking with folks you
Right.
know. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Just want to make sure that we're not interfering with any regulation, sunshine, or any of that nature, because
Your peer-to-peer conversations with
not
folks that
letting that get in the way.
Well, very good. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.